What high school conspiracy turned out to be true at your school? There was a girl freshman year who went missing. She ended up being found dead in the river. There were rumors that she was seen on a bridge with her boyfriend the day she went missing. Nothing was ever found and they assumed it was suicide and accident. Fast forward 25 years and the boyfriend murdered his best friend of several decades, set a fire to cover it up, and went on the run. Couple days later he killed a woman at a rest stop in the bathroom to steal her car. They reopened the case about the high school girlfriend. That rumor was correct all along. He will be in prison the rest of his life. That one of the cheerleaders was dating one of the teachers, in his 40s. A year after graduation, they got married and had a baby. Still together 11 years later. Sounds like what happened in the Portland metro area at the school I went to back in 2010ish time. For years before I got to my high school there was a rumor that the admin assistant, guy you went to when you got in trouble, was doing drugs, selling drugs, and confiscating from students without turning over to the police. Well, about 5 years or so after I graduated he got busted a couple towns away for possession of C with intent to distribute. This reminded me of that post about the mother selling drugs to her kid on the streets disguised as a drug dealer then going home confiscating her son's drugs. I attended a newly opened high school that apparently used to be a school for troubled kids. Someone told me there were padded rooms somewhere in the school so I skipped lunch with a friend one day to walk the halls and find them. They did exist, but by next year they were renovated into offices and storage rooms. I thought that was pretty interesting and seriously wondered what went on there before it was turned into a normal high school. My history teacher tennis coach made moonshine and hosted dong fights in his barn. I ended up becoming friends with his son and it was all true. A very different type of dong than the other type in this thread. Hey, dong fighting is fricked up but at least it's not children. My old math teacher was a WWF wrestler. I recognized him from my childhood days channel surfing and couldn't find anything about him on Google, but I was so sure it was him I just asked. I was right, LMAO. He was supposed to pinch me if he was running out of air. That my high school history teacher was putting whiskey in the 2-liter bottle of Pepsi he carried around every day. He was caught trying to buy liquor for some senior girls and it resulted in a car chase we all watched. The police had to pull out the spike strips to catch him. What a disgrace. My teacher just drank out of a paper bag in class whilst harmlessly mumbling inane life stories at us until he was presumably forced to retire. 2 of the teachers hooking up on a Europe class trip. Gone for a week. Came back and the rumors started. 2 weeks later a rumor started he got divorced. Last week of school they were spotted at a restaurant together. Looked him up a couple years after graduating. They're married. Happy ending sort of. That there were tunnels under the school that led to a hidden pool. Confirmed by my father who was a maintenance man for the school district. The tunnels were just utility tunnels. The pool is below the gym floor and was abandoned due to financial reasons. Those types of pools were popular for a few decades but became incredibly expensive to maintain, not to mention safety issues. One of them is featured prominently in It's a Wonderful Life. That the married drama teacher was bonking the substantially younger art teacher. He swore blind that not only was it not true, anyone believing it was should report it to the head because it was so unprofessional. Then a few years later they had a baby. That our IT teacher slept with his students. He was attractive, young, friendly etc. Then suddenly a rumor went around the school that he was sleeping with a 6th former, aged 17/18. He was suspended for a while but then decided to leave after he was cleared of wrongdoing. He got a new job at my cousin's high school across town. He did it again there, got caught with another 17-year-old and was fired shortly after. That our high school had an extensive network of underground tunnels and shelters left over from World War II. Sure enough, not long after I graduated, they were renovating one of the weight rooms that was either at basement level or partially underground. And they found an entire walled off room stocked with supplies from the early Cold War era that no one had remembered. So maybe the supposed tunnel system under the football field was a bit of a stretch, but there definitely were hidden shelter stockroom areas that had been forgotten about. But everyone knows you need an underground tunnel for the opposing team to flee to the Holiday Inn. Philly fans love hammering people. Due to budget cuts or something, all of our metal and woodwork shop machines were to be taken away and replaced with worse versions. The shop teachers and drama teachers that were in the building at the time didn't like this idea, so they hid all the machines in a fourth wall somewhere in the building. The people came to pick them up and they told them that people had already come to pick them up and that they were late. They did some looking around and couldn't find the machines and gave up. A few years and one principal later they brought the machines back out from behind the walls. And that's how the smallest high school of our district with only around 450 students became the best school in the district to learn metal and woodwork. The cask of a Montessori. There were rumors about a music teacher and a student, but they were both pretty dramatic people and did very little to dismiss the talk, so half the school wanted to believe it for the salacious thrill and half just waved it off as attention seeking and crap talking. Teacher got canned without explanation. Most of us just figured it was budget related. A math teacher filled in on his music theater roles. Years later I randomly caught up with the student and she said the rumors were true. She freaked out and tried to end things to shake off the reputation. And eventually the teacher showed up trashed and naked on her family's front lawn, in the rain, yelling out for her, like a really fricked up version of John Cusack from Say Anything but with less boombox and more drenched twang. Rumor, 9th grade. Kid had a hit list and was going to stab people. Rumor spread like wildfire and the school resource officer was alerted. Next day the bus the kid rode was singled out and isolated at the bus drop-off zone. The school resource officer, a local police officer, assistant principal, and the kid's grade counselor all boarded the bus. SRO searched the bag and found a kitchen knife. Kid was taken off the bus and arrested. I have no idea what happened after that. We had a student teacher, so a reasonably attractive guy who was about 22 or 23. The rumor was that he was dating a girl in our class, a senior who was nearly 18. It turned out the rumor was wrong. He was dating her younger sister who was in 8th grade. That's a twist. English teacher who was close with students, not in a pervy way, but more like he was a fellow student instead of an authority figure, was hosting weekend poker parties with his closest students where he would serve booze and weed. One weekend, someone prank called the cops claiming one of these parties was happening. They went to his place and there was one happening as described, but with pee on every TV in the house. The teacher was immediately fired, had his license revoked and disappeared for a couple of years. Students tried protesting the firing because, well, he was the cool guy who gave them weed and booze. According to social media stalking, he's back teaching English at a high school a few hours south of my town now. Yeah, this totally qualifies as in a pervy way. There is no non-pervy way for an adult to watch pee with children. Automotive mechanics program in high school. The teacher was suspected to be doing drugs. In class often it looked like signs of withdrawal would take over and entirely consume him. It turns out he was doing drugs because when he was let go we found needles and spoons under the seat of a school vehicle we had been working on. I hope he's doing well. It was sad to see him deteriorate in a short amount of time. One of the history teachers cheating on his wife with one of the English teachers. They were going to get a divorce anyways and the second they were divorced they started dating. Science teacher cheating on his wife that has brain cancer with the art teacher. They got caught in the art rooms and were canned. Fun fact, their replacement teachers are now happily married after they met there. Must be a normal thing in high schools. Conspiracy. Rumor was that the chemistry teacher was a pedophile. He was an older, overweight guy with a physical disability. I thought it was just people being judgmental buttholes, and even defended him, until I looked it up. He was caught in a To Catch a Predator style sting at his last school trying to meet up with minors. I have no idea how or why the school hired him. I even sent a message to the superintendent, but never received a reply. What the heck? That's a crappy super. One of the regular subs we had was a drug addict, which isn't too surprising in the area I live in, plus he was in his 70s. He let it slip to multiple classes that he enjoyed smoking weed and doing crack. I mean weed sure, but crack. We had a teacher in his 30s who was rumored to ask pretty graduating seniors to hang out in the last week of school, so technically he wasn't sleeping with students. Welp, he asked the wrong girl and she told everyone. There was a chemistry teacher at my high school who was blinking the pretty senior girls, in some cases literally only hours after they received their diploma. That our principal was a murderer. Apparently, he had been acquitted in a different state of killing his wife, which was sealed. Years later, DNA convicted him. Whoa, that's dark. There was this weird closet built into the middle of the hallway. Yep, the middle. So you had to walk around a giant block of a closet, but the door was always locked. Every morning before the bell rang, we'd meet up by the closet block because it was close to our lockers. The rumor was that it was full of mold because our school was underfunded and gross, but I figured it was just janitorial supplies. I had never seen a janitor go in there, but why would they leave a closet full of mold? Plus, there was already a room that was full of mold. The old boiler room, which was underground and hadn't been used in decades. Then one day, the door was unlocked. Mold, so much mold. Multiple stacks of German textbooks were rotting inside this closet. The pages were wavy and stuck together, and the whole thing was covered in black spots with a white dust on top. The closer you got to the bottom of the stack, the more uniform the books became. They had literally melted together and dried. Lord knows how many times. I simply closed the door and said, "Well guys, I guess this is why we only have Spanish as our foreign language." TLDR. Weird closet full of mold that was dealt with by being locked all the time. What if we kissed in the mold closet and developed cis? Science teacher was lying about being a soldier. Stolen valor. Came back from Afghanistan but was actually in Colorado with his GF. He flipped out when someone I know asked him to name a friend who was Kia. 3 or 4 years later it was revealed that he had been lying about his service record and job experience. Lead in the water. Our high school tap water was dark brown and we weren't allowed to bring our own water bottles or get filtered water from the cafeteria without paying $3. We sent hundreds of emails asking the school board to look into it, but they said it was fine. In my senior year, a student did the science fair project on the illegal amount of lead in the tap water, forcing the school to investigate and fix all the taps. Living in a country with very good tap water, it always baffles me when I hear about crap like this, especially the $3 filtered water thing. One of the CMC teachers was faking his doctorate, never went to college at all. If I recall correctly, we weren't allowed to talk about it because he kept working there for the rest of the school year. He'd go absolutely apeshit on students who called him Mr. X over Dr. X though. It was ridiculous. That the reason a longtime sub was let go because she crapped herself during a class when she lost her crap. Both ways. Conspiracy only lasted until that summer. It was true. Word took forever to get out because 70% of the class didn't show up to begin with. I must say I was impressed with those involved staying tight-lipped some 7 months. That our English teacher had a pee addiction and cheated on his wife. Or that our dance team coach was having an affair with our basketball coach while being married to the baseball coach. All turned out to be true. Coachception. Not a conspiracy, but there was once an absolutely massive turd in the girls' bathroom at my high school. It started a hysteria and pretty soon there was a line of people going in and out of the bathroom to get a glimpse of the thing. To this day, I still wonder who made that giant turd. I instantly thought of the Mad Pooper from Bob's Burgers. When I was in 9th grade, my friend told me there were 2 teachers with funny names. One was Mr. Neck, which I knew. The other was Mr. Head and his first name was Richard. I told her to shut up. It's probably a stupid rumor. Like the rumor there's a pool on the 3rd floor. No parent would be cruel enough to name their kid that. The next year, Mr. Richard Head was my biology teacher. He was a nice guy. I absolutely adored him. His wife worked in the office. She was great too. I ended up working with his stepdaughter a few summers later. She told me he was Richard Head III. With a name like Donghead, I guess you've got to do everything in your power to be nice, otherwise you're fulfilling some kind of fricked up prophecy. That the driver's ed teacher, who was also an assistant football coach, was sleeping with female students. He was engaged and his fiancée lived in another city. She was gorgeous. I think former Miss Teen State. Can't remember the state. Well, it ended up being true. He got suspended and a short time later, can't remember but I think 3 days, they found him dead in his garage. The rumor was sleeping pills, alcohol, and starting his car in a closed garage. Very sad. Our cheerleading coach health teacher was embezzling funds from the cheerleading team. The wild part was that when this was found out, she wasn't even fired. They just took her off the cheerleading team and let her keep being a teacher. That a principal was spending money on her private lunches while we froze because the heating was out for months in -20°C winter. I don't know who blew the whistle, but she was arrested soon, and we got our goddamn heating fixed. Substitute teacher in junior high, who was married to the full-time 8th-9th grade biology teacher, who was smoking hot, looked like Christina Applegate in mid-20s, always wore tight dresses suits that exposed most of her legs with high heels, was rumored to be in P. Well, another kid at school found some older pics of her online. It was something like zoxermomsgonual.com, and turned out to really be her. It somehow was even reported in the news. She was fired. The husband kept working there and I think she just leaned on her side business, wedding planner. But man, every boy in whatever class she was in just froze up with a tight butthole. She was incredibly beautiful at the same time as intimidating with her stern stares. Fricked up that they fired her. Everyone was angry that the junior high drama teacher was fired, till it came out that he was molesting 7th and 8th grade kids. I don't believe this to be true at all, but I once went to a school with a particular water fountain nobody would drink from. Why? Because apparently someone peed on it. About a decade after graduation, I returned to the school to work as an educator. I stopped to drink from the fountain because it was the only one that was free, but one of my students stopped me. Don't drink from that fountain, miss. Someone pee on it. Pretty sure after 10+ years, it's been cleaned at least once. That a high school substitute teacher was showing her self-made pee to students on her cell. The rumors spread rather quickly but no one believed them because we all thought no one could be that stupid. Our minds changed instantly when we saw police cars and news crews showing up filming her being escorted off the premises in cuffs. We were told by our school that we were having a merger with our rival school in an attempt to give the students a better chance, which caused a lot of issues transferring credits wise and also caused a lot of teachers to get laid off. But in actuality the superintendent got a deal to sell the school's land for a huge sum of money, only for the deal to fall through and now the old school is currently abandoned and will probably get bought for probably not even a fraction of the original price, all cause they got greedy. 4 students were caught doing C on the boat after prom. 2 were rich and well connected and walked at graduation. 2 were not well connected and were expelled just before graduation, and the school got a new gym. That the vice principal and school counselor were banging in their offices. A decade later, she is the principal and they both are busted stealing from the locker of confiscated drugs that the school apparently had. On Valentine's Day to boot, she resigned before being investigated fired. Why would the school keep the drugs, LMAO? That seems like a setup for a B comedy where a group of stoner students set up a heist to raid the school drug locker. Each year the senior French class, or the ones who could afford it, took a trip to Paris. One year, maybe like 8ish years before I got there, one of the girls on the trip snuck out of the hotel they were all staying in to meet a guy. Nobody ever saw her again. I always thought it was just some case urban legend. But lo and behold, the French teacher who was on the trip, and still teaching when I was at the school, verified it one day. Honestly, best case scenario is she was murdered that night. I shudder to think of the alternatives. I can't think of much better best case scenarios, like maybe she just married the guy and lives in France now. My very stoic and scary social studies teacher lost her bet and came to school in a pink princess dress with a wig and makeup. Confirmed by my science teacher with photographic evidence. There was this gym teacher that would message senior girls. He would ask to meet up, hang out after graduation on social media. It was middle school, but my math teacher was rumored to be a lesbian even though she was married to the social studies teacher. Well, next year I had the same teacher, but she had a different last name and had what looked like engagement photos of her and a woman on her desk. She was the best math teacher I ever had and TBH she seemed a lot happier the second year. Everyone in my class in 7th grade was a real jerk to our social studies teacher. She was a 30-something-year-old woman who peaked in high school and for the life of her never seemed to find love. We all thought she was desperate to find a husband. Rumor was that she'd be on dating websites during class. This was early 2000s, mind you. But then one time when we had a field trip, we went to the mall food court for lunch, and instead of chaperoning the students, she legit invited a date to meet her there. So we're all sitting there in the food court snickering and watching her flirt with some random guy. As an adult, I feel bad that we picked on her, but to this day, thinking about her bringing her date to the food court is kind of funny. What's a sign someone didn't grow mentally after high school? They get arrested for getting drunk and playing with an illegal firearm and their mugshot looks exactly like their yearbook photo. True story. I have an old friend from high school whose mother partied with us every time a party was thrown. She's still friends with and has slept with multiple people who I went to high school with, not while we were in school, but later on after they were adults. Even after I graduated, 2015. Each time I went to a party there were new people who were high school kids, so eventually I just stopped going to parties there. BC, that was weird af. Another example, same family, would be that one of her sons, currently 26, has no license, never held a job, and relies on everyone else to pay his bills. They live on the same property in different houses, fund his gaming habits, and supply pot cigarettes. Sad as frick. They still throw parties and act like nothing has changed since high school ended. Still acts like one of those annoying high schoolers who have no empathy for anyone and genuinely like making people's lives bad. Cough Jake Paul cough. I know a girl who went and became a teacher. She follows her students on Instagram but won't add them on her Facebook. I noticed that she copies a lot of her students, especially the popular types, outfits, but she only ever posts them on her FB. She also likes to play the mean, popular, you can't sit with us role on her FB in all the pics she posts. I wonder if she became a teacher so she could be the popular girl she dreamed of becoming when she went to high school. She sounds like the type of teacher to play favorites. I know a woman who is well into the second half of her life who volunteered with an after-school program and went full queen bee when some of the kids didn't unquestioningly follow her whims, some of which were outright dangerous, mind you. Here's an unconventional one. People who were smart, did well, were popular, and were at the top of their class who never got out of that mentality. They constantly blame other people for having flaws and continue to think that they're above other people at work or in society. They think because they made an achievement in high school means that they can judge other people for the rest of their lives. Frick you if this is you. Get your snobby little butt outta here. Peaked in high school syndrome. I was friends with a girl at school until her boyfriend hit on me. I was blatantly not into it but he didn't get the hint. I let her know in private, and she stopped being friends with me, and tried to get others to do the same. She stayed with the boyfriend until he dumped her so he could explore his options at uni. I bumped into her at the pub a few years later and she completely blanked me and glared all evening. Spineless idiot. Wimpy ignorant. A good riddance. Bumper or window stickers with crap you'd expect to see on a shirt from Spencer's. Keep honking. I'm reloading. Brakes. You mean the pee pedal? My other rider's your mom, etc. Just graduated high school last year. Can confirm my other rider's your mom is a high school level joke. Being drawn to clique and identity driven drama on social media. Being mentally past high school is realizing no one gives a crap about you and what you are. They have worse things going on in their life than you beings is. So even you bringing it up is annoying. You will only get other mentally stunted people that involve themselves in that. My sister was a slim, pretty girl in high school. She was a huge queen bee. She was in the center, surrounded by about 8 other girls. Her entire life was bitching about who was in and who was out. Fast forward 30 years, add 50 pounds. Still a high school, bullying mentality. People are talking about these 1950s style football players like that's still the main way it happens these days. Really, it's a lot to do with their personality, refusing to take life seriously, commenting on every girl they see walking down the street, getting way too caught up in being in social groups or discords where they form their little cliques. Trying to bully people for having different ideas about how a hobby should be enjoyed. I guess immaturity is the word that captures it best. Arrested development. When people make fun of the things that you can't control, such as your face, body, etc. I guess they never grew out of their tough kid phase. I've had a stutter my whole life. It's not that bad, but is definitely noticeable when I get excited, stressed. Any adult that makes fun of my stutter in a non-joking way automatically gets minus 100 pp points in my mind. Bragging about sexual experience and putting down other people who are not as sexually successful or who they think are not as sexually successful. Roommate still goes out to get crap-faced till 4 AM with his old football buddies from high school and revel in the glory days while his fiance cries at home. Well, now I need to listen to Springsteen. Not showing emotional maturity in relationships, only caring about sex, fear of intimacy, AMD always talking about the glory days of high school. Still sees the world in very black or white terms, no shades of grey. When you're that young, everything is good or evil, the best thing ever or the worst. People who gossip, put other people down, and folks who generally just judge people for no reason. After you reach a certain level of maturity, you focus on your family, your finances, and how to make yourself better. You just don't have time to be invested in other people. Have a way of acting that is insanely immature. They can't have disagreements without thinking the world is ending, or they handle conflict terribly. They don't understand how their actions impact the people around them. They don't admit to their errors and call everything a communication problem to avoid taking responsibility. They keep talking about one experience they had in high school over and over again. Yep, that's a lot. You must have someone in mind. Playground cliques and bullying in the workplace. Having to state to people that they're adults. Anyone who does that way round subconsciously knows they are acting like pricey NTS. With these types, they always say adult, in the vain hope it will fool you into accepting their C-tish behaviors. If they keep riding on the successes of their high school life. I remember this one dude who wouldn't shut up about great he was back in high school. Dude, that was years ago. We don't care. Me. I was bullied throughout middle high school and barely outgrew victim mentality during the time and barely gain any more confidence. And that's more than a decade ago. You've acknowledged it. Make work of it. You don't need to be stuck in history. How do you become unmentally stunted? I have a lot of trauma from school time and sometimes it feels like I'm stuck there. During and post high school, for 3 non-consecutive summers I worked as a summer camp counselor. In high school I was overweight and during my first year in college lost a lot of weight. I worked with some people I knew in high school, as in we were all the same age and I knew some of them from elementary school but we were never friends. One woman, again my age, wanted me to move my seat on the bus somewhere and when I wouldn't again, we were both counselors, she called me fat. I just smirked because I knew what she was trying to do, and it really showed her mentality of still resorting to fat shaming by the time we were both in college. I worked as a summer camp counselor. I still can't decide who was worse, the girls at the camp or a couple of the camp counselors in their 20s. I called an old friend up a couple of years ago. When I asked what he was doing, he said he was smoking a joint and listening to Van Halen. That is exactly what he was doing when we were 16 years old and joined the army together on the buddy plan. We're 58 now. First thing I've seen in this thread that is actually kinda tight NGL. A guy who used to bully me during elementary school and has remained kind of my friend, still calls me by a nickname he picked for me since we were 11 years old, which I totally hate. Last time I met him, I told him I got a job in a different country and I was telling him that I am planning on moving out from the apartment I was renting till then and how I was planning on moving my stuff to the new location. All he had to say or ask was, how much were you paying rent? Oh, you were paying a lot. No, congratulations. No, how good for you. Nothing. What a waste of there that guy is. So stop talking to him then. Don't become stuck. I broke up with my high school boyfriend in early 2012. Not long after that we added each other on Facebook, which looking back was very odd because it was a very bad breakup. And his posting style, the things he said and how he said them, his meme style was burned into my brain even though we unadded each other not long after. About 7 years later we got back in touch for a small amount of time and I checked out his Facebook. If I hadn't checked the dates of his posts I would have sworn he stopped posting in 2012. Because it was like he never changed at all. His way of writing post was still the exact same. He still used 2008 to 2012 slang terms and only those slang terms. He still only shared memes in the style of back then, which for anyone who knows anything about memes, meme styles are constantly evolving and quickly become old and outdated. Like this man was still sharing rage memes unironically, and no new meme styles. He still was cracking jokes that were cool back then as well and only sharing news from that time. What I'm saying is, remember what 2008 to 2012 was like. Now imagine someone who is stuck in that era permanently. I feel so awful for him. Especially since I know that era was the last good time of his life and so that's probably why he's stuck living in that area. I also blame myself because I know me breaking up with him affected him majorly. Well, you really can't blame yourself for ending any teenage relationship. And you definitely should never have to feel like you are the only thing keeping someone happy. You don't need a reason to break up with someone if you're not happy or satisfied and their emotional state of being isn't your responsibility. Being 30 plus and doing that fake white gangster wannabe crap on Facebook, like posting pics hanging out on the couch shirtless with a sideways baseball cap with a caption like "Only God can judge me, frick the haters," and putting School of Hard Knocks under education. Huge number of references to their school days. I have a friend who thinks she has already conquered the world because of achievements in school. A social media profile pic of them looking into the camera with a serious expression while wearing sunglasses and sitting in their giant truck. Another one is listing one of the common books you read in high school as your favorite book, because it suggests that you stopped reading books after high school. Had a guy at work talk about all the sex he was having all the time. Like, yeah, get used to it bud, you're an adult. It's not hard to have sex with a bunch of different partners every weekend. You know what's difficult and actually impressive? Staying loyal to one person. Hang out with people 10 years younger than them. Think that doing drugs is a personality trait. Can't hold a job. Treat their kids like annoying younger siblings. Dresses like a teen while in their mid to late 30s. All of these things describe my 39-year-old brother. They don't try to do anything with their life. They resign themselves to a reality where HS will always be the best part of their life. No one is proud of anything in their past. No one here looks for validation from that past, in the present, or hopefully their future. Everyone here is a highly developed, highly intelligent, elite being. Mental growth is subjective, very subjective. We think we have the right to comment on what mental growth is? We don't. I feel our insecurities led us to separate ourselves from others in an attempt to feel superior in one way or another. We are all a work in progress. NGL, I don't think I'm any different than I was in high school even though I'm in my 30s. I would still make the same decisions with the same rationale because it still makes sense to me. One sign, they still dress like Eminem or Fred Durst circa 1999. Another one, I run into them at the grocery store while they're stuffing beer cans into their big puffy jacket in June. Third sign, they still listen to the same Van Halen albums while partying it up every single weekend, like they did in the 80s. All of these are true stories. 1. Heavy Facebook Instagram use. 2. Never learning to politely yes and in conversation with acquaintances or having a know-it-all contrarian attitude. If their social media contains gangsta Looney Tunes, Joker Harley Quinn quotes, Minions, Grogu memes, or they say stuff like "I don't do drama and I say it like it is some call that being and butthole," they think restaurants with commercials between reruns of SVU are fancy. When most of the time they seem to still be referring to things that happened back in high school or how this person is also referring to that person's personality back in high school, without realizing that they left high school many years ago and that, indeed, people do evolve. I feel like this happens a lot more to people who didn't pursue anything or more studies after HS. I have a buddy who can't hold down a job. He always quits or is fired, and it was always someone else's fault. He's going through classes to become a realtor. Guess what his parents do? What is the funniest thing you got in trouble for doing in school? I got a detention for starting a food fight when I slid an empty chip bag across the table to a friend of mine. In hindsight, I should have responded by actually starting a food fight. If I was already convicted for the crime, I might as well have committed it," said the rapist. In high school we had a multicultural week and each day they had someone make the morning announcements in a different language. Well, I spoke Swedish, and other than an exchange student I knew I was the only one. My announcement had something to do with belly dancing at lunch, so my friend dared me to say that I'd frick the crap out of her, in Swedish, of course. Well, it turns out that one of the teachers was Norwegian, extremely close languages. In 9th grade my principal was writing out forms for a detention for me. Her pen died so I gave her my shock pen. Needless to say I got more hard time. What a smart butt thing to do. In kindergarten my friend dared me to call the teacher Mrs. Banana when she called the roll. I got sent to the kindergarten version of detention called the castle where I had to draw what happened. That is all I actually remember from that time in school, and it still makes me laugh. My school used a software called Deep Freeze, but it was easy to get around because the IT guy was a slow typer. It was pretty universally hated. So what did I do? Changed the startup sound on the Windows 2000 systems to the sound of a woman moaning loudly, followed by a goat's call. Oh, yes, 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 bah. Then I cranked the volume up on the systems. I finally changed the password and locked the systems back down, all remotely. They eventually just removed the speakers from the library computers. In my junior of high school, my friends and I were busted cooking bacon on a George Foreman grill in an unlocked dressing room in the arts hallway. Everyone was supposed to be at a pep assembly and so we figured we could get away with it. It turns out the delicious smell of bacon travels quite far. There was this awful lunch lady that would just power trip all over us poor freshmen whenever she got the chance. Cell phones were allowed, but you couldn't use them during school hours unless it was an emergency. So this lunch lady lived for that brief moment when she'd spot a phone from across the cafeteria and rush over to admonish the student for being such a criminal. Anyway, my friend was caught looking at his phone during lunch. His sister had been sent to the hospital, and his parents were letting him know what happened. This was emergency use, totally fine as far as we knew, but the lunch lady ran over and started screaming at him. She took his phone, made a scene, sent him to the principal. A little later in the period, I pulled out my calculator and started making calls on it. I made sure I was being really loud, making big obnoxious gestures, being all theatrical about it. The lunch lady stormed over and started shouting, "No phones. No phones." I made a big fake frowny face and started looking from her to my calculator and back again, waiting for her to catch on. After a few seconds, the lunch lady completely flipped out. She grabbed my calculator out of my hand, marched me down to the office and made me wait while she went to see the vice principal. After a few minutes she left in a huff without saying anything to me. The vice principal came out puzzled and handed me my calculator. She told me she didn't understand the problem. TLDR. got mad cause I was talking on my calculator. I have a couple friends with diabetes who have insulin pumps. In class, someone's phone would ring and they would answer their pump to cover for the other student. I said Hannibal was a good example of leadership during my 9th grade English class. That didn't go over well and everybody that I was some crazy sicko. I was talking about the Carthaginian general that attacked Rome. All everybody else in the class heard was it puts the lotion on the skin. I also got detention in the 6th grade because someone said I put something in someone's locker. The principal didn't let me speak at all and just issued the sentence, "That mother sucker, I'm P now." I forgot all about that crap. I was blindsided because I did no such thing. Clearly the other students in your class didn't know much, as it puts the lotion on the skin isn't even the right character from Silence of the Lambs. In the late 90s there was a shock segment on the local news about how gang members use 3 circles dots to denote some gang affiliation or something in tags. I remember seeing this on the news and thinking it was pretty dumb. Less than a week later, one of the high school counselors pulled me in and wanted to know why I had gang symbols in my name and made a big stink about it. At first I was confused. Gang symbols? In my name? Then I remembered the stupid local news story and realized what the stupid bee was talking about. The letter I appears 3 times in my full name, so there were 3 dot circles above my name. I got in trouble for the way my name is spelled. Evidently when I was little, around the 5th or 6th grade, I had led the kids to the gym for pay, but I decided we needed more recess time, so I took them to the playground instead. I think it's safe to say good times were had. You Mosesed it. When I was in 4th grade, the high school choir came to our building for a nice sing-along concert of sorts. In our building was grades 4-6, so I was still very intimidated by the older kids all around. So I filed into the cafetorium, sat with my friends in my class, and was having a good old time singing some carols, and surprisingly, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer came up. Being in 4th grade, we were all about the special version with the additions between lines. So, of course, after Santa came to say, my friend and I yelled out, in his underwear. Apparently, that is an abomination. The director stopped the song and refused to go any further until he was given an apology. My teacher and the principal, gasp, picked out my friend and I as the sole offenders regardless of the countless others partaking in our version. We were then forced to go in front of the whole school, apologize multiple times for our transgressions against all that is joyous, and leave the concert. I was mortified all day because they had called home. When I got home, my mother just laughed at me. Whoa, so they completely humiliated you because of that. Rank. In the 6th grade, I was not allowed to attend that year's music day field trip. I had farted in music class one too many times. I stayed home and played Diablo 2 all day. We were in a computer lab and the teacher had to use the bathroom, so she had a teacher in an adjacent lab watch over our room. The second teacher came in and basically said if anyone leaves you will get detention, and then went back into her class and continued teaching. I walked over to the door and opened it and shut it and then went back to my seat and sat down. The teacher came over and absolutely flipped out trying to figure out who left. Finally, after a few minutes of hilarity, I came clean and ended up with a few lunch detentions. Worth it. I walked out of ceramics class and found a spare motorized wheelchair just sitting in the hall. I drove it up and down the hall a couple times with my black hood on, acting like a handicapped Darth Vader saying "Wook, I am Yalf Order." Apparently there was security cameras in that hall. I had a day of in-school suspension and the principal called my mom. All she did was laugh. You definitely live up to your name. My little brother printed out a picture of his middle school's principal and taped it to the back of a urinal in the boys' bathroom. The teachers found out when they saw a line of boys stretched all the way down the hall waiting for their turn to pee on the principal's face. My parents were pee that he got suspended, but I've never been more proud of him. Hehehe, pee. I thought it would be a great idea if I didn't need to take bathroom breaks in 1st grade. I would just crap my pants, and then have a spare pair in my backpack, do a quick swap in the back of the room, and then just wash them when I got home. It was foolproof. That plan lasted all of one time. Not even all of the one time, more like halfway. This is not my story, but I heard it from the perpetrators. They had a sub for their English class, so the girl spent the better part of a half hour telling the sub about her fake pregnancy, and then another student ran up, screamed $5 abortion and stage punched her in the stomach. The sub freaked out. Falcon punch. We were left unattended in theology class a lot for some reason. Theology class was on the 2nd floor of the high school building, which overlooked the parking lot, and across from that, the elementary school. So one day I directed my friend to give me his shoe, and then I told him to go outside and lie face down on the grass directly under the classroom window. Try to look as sprawling as possible. Then I opened the window, and holding his shoe, I started screaming. I had to apologize for disrupting classes, and I had to apologize to a couple of elementary school teachers for nearly rupturing their hearts when they thought a student had fallen from the window, but got in surprisingly little trouble aside from that, most likely because it was the least my class was known for doing. You were left unattended because God was watching you, silly. The dean of students at the time threatened to have me expelled and arrested for spitting in a trash can. A school-wide walkout was held in her honor and she left at the end of the year. Go figure. I don't even. Why? Not me, but a guy in the grade ahead of me was such a frickass that the teachers would never let him go to the bathroom cause he would always frick around in the hall, so twice, he shat his pants in class to show the teachers what dongs they were. This was in 7th grade. Like a boss. I got my diploma withheld for walking across the stage with a stuck-up demeanor and saying thank you into the microphone during the graduation ceremony. I then again got in trouble for acting mentally retarded when they wanted to scold me for doing what I had done. This is why you never go full retard. As a homeschooler, pretty much anything I did at home could count. But I do fondly remember one occasion in middle school where I woke up early and surprised my parents by cleaning the bathrooms in the house to perfection before starting my schoolwork, and was grounded for 2 weeks because I threw away my dad's moldy, bristleless toothbrush. I remember being interrupted while doing my math homework to my dad jumping up and down screaming like a banshee. In that moment I lost all respect for my parentals and my years of rebellion were set into sail. Your dad sucks. In kindergarten I used to get in trouble for reading the directions on a worksheet and completing the worksheet according to the directions. In our school reading wasn't formally taught until the 1st grade, so my kindergarten teacher firmly believed that kindergartners shouldn't be able to read. Sorry, my mother taught me to read when I was 3. I also got in trouble for playing cars and building blocks with the boys during playtime. Girls were supposed to play house and play with dolls, and boys were supposed to play with cars and building blocks, and never the twain shall meet. Frick everything about those teachers. It didn't happen to me but my friend Curtis. At my school there was a noise that a large portion of the student body would make to annoy the teachers called the noise. A noise was performed by yelling the word "at" while grabbing your vocal cords and shaking them to produce just about the most obnoxious noise this planet has ever known. After a semester of the "at" noise being in existence, it became a detentionable offense to make said noise while at the school. With this knowledge the story may begin. During 8th period, the last period of the day, my friend Curtis was in Algebra 2 honors with a lovable teacher that was in good spirits and everyone would do everything in their power to distract him during lecture as a sport. During class, our teacher turned to face the whiteboard and write out some equations and the "at" noise went off by someone I cannot remember. He turned around snapping, "Who made that noise? Don't make that noise, don't even think about making that noise." And Curtis looked to the back of his eyes and leaned back, clearly thinking about making the "at" noise. Our teacher, seeing this, said, "Curtis, detention for thinking about making the "at" noise." Curtis and most of the class burst out laughing, asking for the actual note, claiming that he got detention for thinking about making the "at" noise. You realize what you must now do? Post a YouTube tutorial. When I was in 7th grade I was completely done with my assignment in a computer class and there was only one student who was still working on the assignment. The rest of the class was already logged out of their computers and waiting for the bell to ring. I quick logged back into my computer and sent 500 blank sheets of paper to the printer and then logged out. The only student who was visibly logged in of course got blamed and an outburst occurred until I couldn't handle it anymore and finally admitted to it and got a day of in-school suspension. I call shenanigans. There is no school computer in existence that can log in less than 3 minutes. In kindergarten, I accidentally splashed my shirt with water while washing my hands in the ladies' room. So when I got back to my desk, I took my shirt off. I watched too much TV when I was little. I believed that if you screamed into a container and put your hand over the top of it, you could hold the scream in. I wanted to do this to my friend and scare him. I screamed into my thermos, put my hand over it, and put it up to his ear. Little did I think that there was still milk inside. I gave my friend a nice milk bath. I never told anyone why I did it because I didn't want my parents to take away my Scooby-Doo. During freshman year my friends and I came up with a system of throwing away our trash at lunch. Instead of each of us throwing away our own trash, we'd pile it all up in the middle of our table, then spin a bottle twice at the end of lunch. Whichever 2 people it landed on would then have a best 2 out of 3 rock, paper, scissors match to determine who would throw all the trash out. Naturally, we would make the pile as messy as possible to really punish the loser of the contest. Eventually the school staff noticed what was happening and called in the vice principal, who then scolded us for being messy and literally said we were the scum of the school. The thing that was most frustrating though, was the fact that we actually took the cleaning up part seriously and he wouldn't listen when we pointed out that every day our table was completely spotless when we left. Luckily, the lunch ladies finally did realize that we would clean our table better than anyone else and ended up letting us play our game for the next 3 years as long as we never left the table dirty. I'm still pee at being called scum though. Holy crap, I did the exact same thing in 8th grade. Senior year I was the control room operator of our daily TV show they did during homeroom. Well, I found this ridiculously funny Mexican rap CD and decided it would be funny to play the music as a lead into commercials. Well, at the end of the show the guy forgot to turn off the music and it played for a solid 10 minutes. Turns out there was a ton of swearing that the Spanish teacher recognized and she called the principal. Got called into the office and screamed at. After the principal was done yelling, I had the nerve to ask if he could give me my CD back that he confiscated. Well, it was your CD. You had every right to ask for it back. I secretly put a piece of chalk and an eraser in my 5th grade class. Most of the class laughed when the teacher tried to erase something on the chalkboard. Got sent to the principal office for it. Later that night, my parents even received a phone call. My friend left his Facebook up on one of the computers which it wasn't blocked. My other friend and I decided to have some fun and basically made him look as gay as possible. We changed his sports, likes, movies, and made a man with short shorts as his profile picture. It was hilarious. Like 2 days later, I get called into the principal's office with the other girl and he starts grilling me about this, saying it was bullying and blah blah. So he calls the owner of the Facebook in, and the guy basically says, they weren't bullying me and I know they were joking. We're friends. But the principal still is angry about it. I was so upset because I'm basically a good kid, never in trouble. But then he asked, did you change his sports to ribbon dancing, and I just cracked up. Long story short, 3 days ISS. Didn't get to go to homecoming, but it was hilarious. Not me but a friend of mine from high school. He and a group of guys decided to head out at 3rd period to smoke one day. Our high school wasn't an open campus and could be tricky to get in and out because there were only 2 entrances, with security at both doors. In order to get in and out without stopping at security, you had to have someone on the inside. Suffice to say, my HS was big on keeping students in the school, and unknowingly big on encouraging Shawshank-style breakouts to smoke weed. Anyway, one of his buddies suggested that the group go to said buddy's car to smoke because it was parked pretty close and was an SUV. There were like 7 of them smoking, and after about 15 minutes, a car rolls up behind the car they were hotboxing, and who steps out of the car? None other than the car owner's mother, coming to pick up her car. The dude forgot that his mom was coming to pick up the car. Read. A common side effect of marijuana use is short-term memory loss, and she clearly flipped her crap when she saw the scene in front of her and the billows of smoke exiting her car. She was intent on giving the principal their names, and because these were all friend of her son, she knew everyone's names. Everyone except for my friend. When she asked him his name, he cleverly told her Tim Johnson. At the time, we were ready to kill a mockingbird, and Tim Johnson happens to be the rabid dog that Atticus Finch shoots. Brilliant high idea. She has no reason to believe this is a lie, so she proceeds to go to the principal and turn them all in. My buddy was sure he was in the clear because it had been a couple of hours and he hadn't been called to the office. But then it happened, and he got it a lot worse than the others. Turns out, there was only one junior named Tim Johnson that year, and it also turns out that he was a special education student and had been pulled out of his class and was grilled for taking part in baking out the car. My high school was about 1,700 kids, so my buddy had no idea that there was a real Tim Johnson. Needless to say, they ended up figuring it out some way, and my buddy got the book thrown at him. Once the dust settled, his parents put him in boarding school a couple states over to finish high school. TLDR. Buddy got busted for smoking out a car, gave the mother a fake name and mistakenly gave the name of a special education student. Administration did not find it ironically funny. I feel bad for the special needs kid, but that's hilarious. This will be buried, but when I was in 5th grade I was a bit chubby, especially my legs. The seats at our lunch tables were very close together and hard for me to fit through when sitting down getting up. When I was standing up to throw my tray away, my chubby leg got caught between the seats and I fell backwards, spilling food all over my plate. I squealed like a bee, and the teacher runs over and sentences me to a week of detention. She thought it was a cry for attention. My mind was full of frick. Your username sums up my thoughts upon reading this quite precisely. My first and only detention was for jumping off the swings at recess, bestowed upon me by the playground lady that was sleeping with my married teacher. 2 summers ago my oldest son was trying to set the world record high jump off the swings and broke both of his arms. The teacher meant well. I printed up a bunch of flyers that said tulips, windmills, and a reduced crime rate, things that plague a nation that decriminalizes marijuana, and hung them all around the school. The art teacher was upset by this and gave me a referral which sent me to the office. The vice principal was amused by the situation and just said don't hang flyers without my permission and sent me back to class. Since I didn't get in trouble and was now annoyed by the art teacher for taking down all my flyers, before I went back to class I laminated the referral and made a necklace out of it. The art teacher, upset by my lack of a punishment and even more upset by my new jewelry, gave me another referral, this time for insubordination, and sent me back to the office. This time the VP just let me stay there until lunch. He had candy on his desk and I got out of a day's work with no real repercussions. A friend handed me a condom on a school bus on the way to middle school and dared me to blow it up. I blew it up rather large and everyone on the bus was laughing hard as they could. I then threw the condom out the window and it landed on the lower part of the windshield of the car driving behind us and stuck to the windshield wiper. It was all everyone could talk about at school that day. Since I was in the 7th grade, I was asked what I was doing with a condom. Freaking me day and night, obviously. My Spanish teacher in high school was pregnant for 3 out of the 4 school years. Junior year we were making pinitas for our last couple weeks of class. When asked what my friends and I were doing for our groups, we jokingly replied that we were making a small-bodied replica of one of us with a giant head. Our friend does have a generous melon. Our Spanish teacher laughed and approved the idea. He was not amused. We instead made a pinata of her. We reversed the body proportions. The head, arms, and legs were now tiny while the belly was large and filled with confetti and a troll doll. The presentation day and the ceremonious popping landed us in detention. When turning in our detention slips, the principal laughed, commenting that at least there was confetti. I refused to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. No one gave a crap before 9/11. After 9/11, however, patriotism was rampant. So every day that I didn't stand, I got a referral. I got in school suspension, out of school suspension, and eventually expelled. I guess it's not really funny as much as a freaking seriously kind of thing. In 4th grade I found a Playboy magazine in a house that was under construction. I cut out pictures and took them to school. I was caught selling them in the cafeteria bathroom during lunch. Punishment: the principal sent me home with an envelope containing one of the naked lady pictures for my parents to sign. Parents' response: my father wrote a note back to the school that his wife didn't sign autographed pictures. Your dad is awesome. My friend got suspended for 2 days because he wrote I masturbate as an answer to a question in a test he was taking in German class because he didn't know any German at that point. The question was Matchst du in deiner Freizeit? Not me, but 3 friends of mine streaked across the field at our high school's playoff game. They got arrested and a 5-day suspension, but the school loved it. And he was aroused by it. It's my sister's story. When her friends would get up from the cafeteria table to get more food, she would drop a tampon in their water glasses. They expanded epically. One day the wrong teacher saw her do it. She got detention. I really hope she saved that slip. Once in the 2nd grade I sat behind a boy who I had a crush on. I don't know why, but I cut a small piece of his hair with my scissors. The teacher saw me do it. She said, "What kind of malarkey is this?" I had to stay in from recess and she wrote a note to my mom, who also thought it was a bunch of malarkey and grounded me for a week. No more shenanigans for me after that. I was on the straight and narrow. I only used my scissors for cutting colored paper and manila paper. I got my comeuppance alright. My friends and I broke into our desktop publishing classroom, we picked the lock, and played Minesweeper, like a boss. This guy is gangsta right here. One time I stood too close to a door and was sent inside. Another time I kicked a ball too high and was sent inside. Another time I was playing lightning wrong at recess and was sent inside. Another time we realized how ridiculous this was getting, so we did bicycle kicks and sure enough, inside. Gotta say though, my favorite was ghosting a teacher. That was kind of stupid on my part, but hey, we were bored and it was funny at the time. What are unethical practices schools do? This is at a university level. Say you are a grad student who just secured an opportunity to travel internationally with university funding for your research. You put in a travel request with a suggested travel and lodging budget that gets approved within your funding. You, the grad student, still have to front the money, no matter how much it is, and reimbursement can take 3 weeks, 3 months depending on how much pressure the finance office is under, who operates on a first in first out basis. So, you secured this wonderful grant for thousands of dollars, making no little money as a grad student. Maybe you are even a fully funded student paying no tuition. You still may be too poor to actually conduct the research you were brought there to do. The grad student research programs at universities are essentially a forced labor class that is taking advantage of grad students and holding degrees over their heads in exchange for tons of underpaid hours of research labor. Do some research into how many doctorate degrees are handed out versus how many actual jobs require doctorate degrees, and you can see how unethical these practices are. Less severe but limiting kids' access to water. That is, you can't have your drink bottle at the table. Which sucks when you live in Australia and at summer the temperature gets up to 36°C and school is during all the hottest hours of the day. When I was in elementary school you could only have water at lunch if you had a lactose allergy. Other than that you were forced to only drink milk. Lowering a school's funding if the SAT scores are low. If the scores are low, there should be more funding to help kids learn. Completely backwards SMH. This is probably very specific to my home country, but period checks. I feel your pain. One of my PE teachers used to record our periods in her register so she could give detentions when we said we couldn't take a shower after the session with that as a reason. I'm the case of there being a fire. I think it's stupid we have to go in alphabetical order. So Adam is happy and healthy, but Zach just turned into ash. In my opinion, they should all just get in a line no matter what. I'm terribly sorry, but something about Adam is happy and healthy, but Zach just turned into ash, was extremely funny to me. Not letting kids go to the toilet when they need to. I distinctly remember one kid in my German class bursting into tears because he couldn't hold it in any longer. He asked at least 3 times. Something similar happened when I was at school. Kid was in my German class really needed to go, but the teacher said you had to ask everything in German. Poor kid was on the lower end of smart. This was a high set, but he was carried by other subjects as they were double up for some reason. And he nearly cried because he could ask it in German as he was struggling to grasp the language. If a bully starts a fight and you defend yourself, you get suspending for fighting. If a bully starts a fight with you and you do nothing to defend yourself, you get suspended for fighting. If you run from a bully to avoid a fight, you still risk being suspending for fighting. This is why I beat the poop out of a bully when I was in 8th grade. I figured that if I was going to be suspended for the actions of someone whom I could not control, I may as well learn it myself. Requiring you to purchase textbooks brand new from the college's bookstore because that's the only way to get the access code to complete the required assignments on the publisher's website. Even better, let the professor write the book for the course. They change one stupid thing each year so they know if you get an older edition. Plus they're getting paid to teach the course and write the book each year. I had a bully in middle school grab and twist my thumb hard enough to snap tendon, or whatever is in your thumb. It's been a while, and nothing happened to him since he would have to sit out football if he was punished. I had a student who never showed up and never did work in my class. The principal asked me to change his F to a 75. I emailed back, explaining that the student never made an effort, etc. He told me to be a part of the team and do as I was told. I was only a second year teacher and was afraid of losing my job, so I obliged. Same principle. A couple years later, we had a very large student, and as she walked down the bus ramp one day, some boys called out the bus window the filthy things they wanted to do to her while also calling her fat. I wrote them up and chewed them out. When the principal read the referral, he simply said, "Boys will be boys," and tore up the referral. To this day, I wish I would have asked him what he would have done if that was done to one of his daughters, but I was so shocked. It still boils my blood. Same thing happened to me as a teacher. I stuck to my guns and lost my job. A good thing, in hindsight, but it was devastating to me at the time. Bit of a niche one this. My school's gym teacher not only didn't stop bully, but openly supported it because them little soft sensitive fricks need to be taught how rough the real world is, and he would cheer on the bullies when he saw them beating up other students. Good gym teachers are hard to find here, so he's staying was the school's answer to that. Passing students that aren't ready for the next grade because they need to pad their passing rates to keep funding. It's setting the kids up for failure down the road. Some schools focus really hard on certain metrics. One school in my area has a ridiculously high rate of graduates that go to college. They do this in part by strongly encouraging students not intending to go to college to drop out or test out in their senior year. Making school start at 7 AM and the bus route comes by your house before 6:30 AM. So you have to get up around 5:30 to 6 AM every morning. Then say you have an extracurricular activity that takes at least 2 hours, but if it's a sports game it's probably closer to at least 4 hours. Then let's say you have a test tomorrow as well as some homework, so you study work for at least 2 hours. At this point you have spent well over half your day doing school related activities. If you want to get a full 8 hours sleep, which is unlikely, that leaves you with about 2 hours of free time per day, of which a good chunk of it is probably spent eating a meal, showering, getting ready for the next day, etc. And then people are surprised when teenagers are always tired, depressed, anxious, etc. Schools are fricked. I had a friend who had to ride the bus to school and she was the first pickup, which meant she was getting picked up at like 5:30, 5:45 in the morning, which meant she was getting up at least 5 in the morning to get ready. She often slept on the bus while it ran its route. I honestly don't know how she did it. Making kids sell magazines or whatever should be 100% illegal, and I don't know what kind of parents stand for that bulls. When I was in school they still could revoke bathroom breaks, and some teachers still did when they made it illegal to ban them. Additionally, in my time for an entire year 7-8 grade I only had 1 hour of recess in my entire time, because my special ed teacher felt that recess, which is mandatory by law, was a distraction, so what she would do is punish us so we couldn't do it. This caused a lot of stress and trauma, and she even prohibited bathroom breaks. Looking back, I wish my parents sued. In my state we don't have recess from 6th to 12th grade. Not allowing kids to use the restroom. I was a decently misbehaved 3rd grader. Told my teacher I had a stomachache and I needed to go to the nurse. I asked a number of times. She thought I was just trying to get out of individual reading time. My appendix burst on the bus ride home. Having worked in a private school for 16 years, I have so many answers for this, but I'll limit them to the following. 1. Stating in the shiny brochure given to parents that any possession or use of drugs means instant expulsion, and then allowing students caught with drugs to return after a 2-week suspension. The only kid at my former workplace who was expelled over drugs had it happen because they stole the money they used to buy them. 2. Telling students that if they defended themselves from local bullies they'd be suspended. This rule was dropped after a student ended up being pushed into a river after having their nose broken. 3. Letting students sleep in dorms where the walls were riddled with damp because there was no money in the budget for repairs, while finding the funds to do a full refurb on the toilets in the school auditorium right before the visit of a member of the royal family. 4. Treating male and female students differently. Case in point, a female student caught performing oral sex on a male student was moved to a new school, while the boy was allowed to remain where he was. A student ended up being pushed into a river after having their nose broken. Bro, glad they at least reconsidered after that. Sounds like a fight in an action movie. My daughter's best friend was running track and the coaches were yelling at her to run more laps. She told them her legs were hurting really badly, so they yelled at her and told her to run another lap. She started crying because of the pain and ended up falling, breaking both kneecaps. As she lay there screaming, the coaches didn't even come to help her. One of the kids called 911 and when they showed up the coaches acted like they didn't know what to do with the situation. To make it worse, my daughter was on the volleyball and track team and they tried to do the same to her, but I went up to the school and went off on the principal and coaches about pushing the kids too hard just so the coaches could win their games. I sent my daughter to a rehab for her leg issues and they said her legs were stressed and the coaches were overworking her. So I will be taking this up with the school superintendent. Closing every single bathroom because of one fight in a bathroom. We have 28 bathrooms in our school, all of them closed. Most good colleges chase rankings to the detriment of the student body. There has also been an abandonment from state schools to provide affordable education to everyone in the state. Also, a lot of those rankings are based on graduate programs and have nothing to do with the quality of their undergraduate programs. Worst, probably the sky-high cost of attendance. The most visible evidence of this is the endless list of administrators, administrative assistants, specialists, administrative associates. The list goes on. Unless you are dirt poor and qualify for Pell Grants US, the cost of a name brand school is hard to swallow. Add inflation and it's even worse. Yet, Ontario doesn't play those funding games. Most schools are at about the same level of quality. I mean, sure, there is likely bloat in admin staffing, etc. But our schools don't have the vastly differing funding levels I hear about in the States. UK here, maybe not quite on the same track as some of the answers, but basically schools forcing university as the only option after leaving school. Never mind college, apprenticeships, going straight into a job, etc. They don't want to hear about it unless it's a university. I've even seen schools making students pay and apply for university even when they've got offers at college or accepted an apprenticeship. I presume it's because the more students that get offered a place at university, then the better the statistics are, and that seems to be a huge focus unfortunately these days. My school made me apply for university even though I was set on an apprenticeship and they agreed. I went through so much stress since my university changed my application because I was eligible for a more academic course. I rejected my university on result day and the school got salty, but frick them as I started my dream apprenticeship on Wednesday. Not so much a school problem, but kind of related. When I was in first grade, a couple of third graders cornered me and started saying things like your mom doesn't love you and will abandon you at school, which isn't so bad. But 6-year-old me was devastated. I told my teacher that I was being bullied at recess and she asked what grade the bullies were in. I didn't know at the time and guessed that they were in second. She pretty much responded, I highly doubt that any of them would do that, but I'll look into it. A little while later she approached me and told me to stop lying. Yeah, you should really be asking your bullies what grade they're in while they're bullying you. Sorry that happened to you though. Jokes aside. There are not enough bathrooms open, ever. At my school there are 5 restrooms for 1,200 students, and not all of them are open during brunch and lunch. The lines are so long, especially for the women's restroom. The staff have access to 3 restrooms on the campus, which only have 1 or 2 stalls. In one building there are over 25 women and only 2 stalls. We get 6 minutes between classes, 15 minutes at brunch, and 30 minutes at lunch. Many of us have serious intestinal and bladder issues due to holding it for years and years of our career. Don't even get me started on how dirty the student restrooms are. Using the restroom should be a basic right. Humiliating and/or calling out students in front of the whole class. I agree. That's something that can shake the very foundations of the confidence and self-esteem a kid has and causes long-lasting trauma. Not allowing to drink water. Like bro, no discipline is being inculcated by making me thirst in a place where I'm supposed to pay attention to the board. Dress code policing. Especially for girls. It's demeaning, and I say that as a man. not allowing to go to the washroom. Once my friend literally started crying because he had to go and the teacher was going to cut attendance if he put a step outside class. She eventually obliged, but what a bee. Yeah, something is very wrong if a child must basically publicly threaten to pee themselves so they can go. We have to stand outside for however long the school wants us to. Longest has been up to an hour, in the winter, in silence and without coats. Keeping bad teachers in their positions. Not the same as a good teacher with poorly performing students with bad home life, etc. Making children have to pay for their lunch. I grew up where some students paid full, some paid reduced, and some didn't pay at all, depending on the family's income. If you didn't pay, you got a sandwich with 4 slices of cheese and that was all. But honestly, no one should have to pay at all for their school lunch. Making all the girls walk into a classroom and get down on their knees in front of their male classmates to measure our uniform skirts to make sure they were not too short and up to code. Extremely freaking humiliating as middle schoolers and completely uncalled for. So for about a year, I worked for a federal student loan servicer. People would call in, and I'd try to help them find a way to manage their student loans. I don't want to really unravel the student loan thing, but there are financial aid offices out there that are straight up lying to their potential students. If I had one person tell me that they were told they wouldn't have to pay back their loans if they graduated, I'd chalk it up to that person being an idiot. When I had 10 people tell me they were told that, I think there's someone misinforming them. All these students attended Bible colleges in Tennessee and Arkansas. Put makeup exams during lunch. I'm running on no food for the past 21 hours because I had to skip lunch to do a makeup exam. Thank God the school day is almost over. Side note, I exercise a lot so I generally eat a lot, so this crap is really annoying. Underdeveloped gifted programs. Oh, you get through your work quickly? Here's more. And a couple puzzles. We aren't gonna teach you how to study or teach you the social skills that gifted kids often lack. We're just gonna tack on more work and stress you out. Good luck in college without those study skills we didn't teach you. Just about every school is very hierarchical and teaches kids to never question authority, in this case the teacher principal. Teachers are on occasion incorrect or may poorly explain things, and school policy can sometimes be profoundly unjust. It is heavily indoctrinated that children should never question these things, and it is often punished when they do. This leads to people growing up with a very unhealthy hierarchical approach to just about all aspects of life. Or sometimes they can just be a C who takes pleasure in waving their authority around to little kids, to the point where even their colleagues think it's absurd. Purposely charging my student account with purchases I've never made. The lunch lady told me I couldn't graduate without paying the $0.25 balance on my account. I paid cash for every transaction, and never on my card. I asked her to pull up the purchase as proof and she refused, saying it's against school policy. So the next day I tossed a quarter on the ground in her office and walked away. Should have dropped 25 pennies on her office floor instead. On what was probably my first week of secondary school, I was walking out when someone I barely knew passed me a tie he'd stolen from someone else and ran off, soon followed by the other guy. Not being involved, I shrugged, put the tie on a railing, and walked off. Somehow I was the one that got into trouble because the tie was lost. See, another thing that happened, I didn't do pay due to a disability, and one day the girls' coach, a man, pushed me against a wall, somehow offended that I didn't do pay, and said if I were in his class he'd make me do 100 push-ups. I said you teach the girls though, and he went into the girls' changing rooms. Pretty sure he didn't get fired even though I brought it up to the front desk. Man was a frickin' weirdo, and even without our interaction he probably shouldn't have gone into the girls' changing rooms where I'm 80% sure there was still someone in there. I ended up being forced out of the school because people kept trying to beat me, the disabled kid, up, and didn't like it when I punched them back. They remained, but I was classed as troubled for fighting so often, despite the fact I was fighting off people who would either try to fight me or fill me up for God knows what reason. Entire school must have been full of dickheads and closeted lads. Giving students a limited amount of bathroom passes. Making student hold in their pee like they're robots. Amount of allowed absent days. Holding your records and diploma because your parents are behind in payments. I went to a very good but expensive private school, which my parents could consistently pay when I was very young, but struggled after 2008, when they'd be behind in payments. The school would hold my grade sheet from my parents, so I could never see the comments my teachers would have about me. Finally, at my graduation ceremony, I couldn't have access to my diploma nor my grades, which I needed to complete my college dossier, until my parents paid what they owed to the school. Of course people should pay their dues, but taking it with the students made me feel very bad. No repercussions for teachers. USA. For example, in 7th grade, I had a math teacher with very little patience. Math has always been my weakest subject and an insecurity for me for as long as I can remember. So I asked a lot of questions because I wanted to do well and actually learn. The defining moment that hurt and still sticks with me to this day 15 years later was when I took a math test. This teacher told me because I got a low score I would never amount to anything in my life. Literally to a 12-year-old kid. Who TF does that? All that happened was a parent-teacher conference and a week away from her class. Some people do not deserve to teach. Dude, can I just bring up homework they assign you over break? Like those stupid reading things during the summer. God, I hated those. My school got rid of AP classes and integrated the AP students in with normal classes. We were given the job of helping low-performing students with classwork. So instead of learning anything my senior year in my core classes, I was at A. Making me and everyone else wake up at 6 in the morning. Literally everyone looks like they want to die in my first class periods. My teacher even complains about it occasionally. I suffered horrible insomnia as a teenager, still do, and I'm in my 30s now. I slept through homeroom every day and was barely awake during first period. Always got in trouble for sleeping during study hall or after tests. Slept every day on the bus to and from school. I literally could not stay awake and I had to be up at 5 every friggin' day. Assigning 300 problems worth of math homework every night that take 5-10 minutes to write out each. On top of that, teachers do not coordinate, so they all decide to give 3 hours worth of homework per night and somehow expect students to complete it all and not be sleep deprived when they come in the next day. Also punishing the victims of bullying when they fight back. Seriously, may the fleas of 1000 camels feast upon you for the rest of your days. They try to teach accountability by punishing all students if one student misbehaves. Elementary school. This encourages students to dislike school and bullying to the one who misbehaves. I hate it. Most, if not all, comments are unethical practices schools do that affect kids, but there are plenty of unethical practices that affect teachers as well. As with all things, it depends where in the world you live, of course. My wife's an elementary school teacher. A few things that come to mind. They get paid 35 hours a week, but that's the hours they are at school. However, they have nowhere near enough free time to prepare their classes and exams, grade homework and exams, etc. That is to be done at home, unpaid. A lot, and I mean a lot, of required material comes out of their pockets. They have an ever so tiny budget every year for material that isn't even close to being enough. Everything else has to be purchased with their own money. Even at school, if they print copy more than X pages, nowhere near enough, they have to pay for the extra pages. This is more of a COVID specific thing, but in Quebec, due to the explosion of COVID cases, they decided to have Zoom classes until the 17th of January. In the same announcement, the government made it very clear that anyone who can work from home should do so. Next day, my wife gets a message from her school telling her she'll have to do her Zoom classes from the school. Go figure. More specific to my wife's school, though I have no doubts it happens in many other schools as well. The more senior teachers have a lot of influence on how the students are split in the different classes, which often results in them taking all the easy students and leaving the more junior teachers with the difficult ones, rather than try and split them more evenly. What did you get in trouble for in elementary school? In grade 3 they asked us to draw anything that came to mind. I have no idea why, but I randomly decided to draw a gun. I made it very detailed and was quite stoked on the design. But when the teacher saw it, she made me erase it and draw sunrise. and called a special meeting with my parents. If you want kids to draw the sunrise, ask them to draw the sunrise. My friends and I were pretending to be bugs during recess. I was a scorpion. I shook my butt and said I stung one of the other kids. He pretended to die. I was put on a timeout bench for the rest of recess. This was kindergarten, 25 years ago, and I still don't know why I was punished. Kids were getting killed by lava monsters all the time. My son got in trouble for naming his intramural basketball team the P Crushers. His reasoning was that all the other teams were pussies and they were going to crush them. That is rock solid reasoning. I peed down the swirly slide at my school. Then I tried to forge my mom's signature and spelled her name wrong and also put the date 1 year off. This was in 1st grade. Jala is excused from school forever. Moom. When I was in the 2nd grade, my teacher was pregnant and I overheard another student calling her fat. I explained to him that even though she looked fat, she was really just pregnant and that he shouldn't say that about her. The teacher only heard me call her fat and I got in trouble for it. Stupid fat bee. But was she fat? In 1st grade, I was in the bathroom at the urinal doing my business, with 2 other kids there as well. I head to the sink to wash my hands, and as I turn the faucet on, I hear, "Hey, wanna see something funny?" One of the kids turns to the other, pants on floor, shirt pulled up high, and pisses all over him. The pee-drenched kid turns towards the offender mid-pee and begins a spraying counterfire. They both start sobbing during battle and I try to sneak out, not wanting to be part of it. 5 minutes later, they both walk into my class soaked in pee and tears. They tell the teacher I did it. I had to change my gold star to a silver star. Worst day of my life. I am crying laughing at this one. Little kids are so hilariously dumb. Hate what is happening enough that they're sobbing but refuse to stop doing whatever it is that's making them cry. Sorry you lost your gold star, though. One time, me and my buddies got in trouble on the playground for skipping rocks and accidentally hitting the teachers with them. I also got in trouble in kindergarten for using the urinal in the bathroom and having my pants fall all the way down to my ankles because I had no idea how to keep them up at that point. My mom gave me money to turn into my teacher for an upcoming field trip in kindergarten. On the bus ride to my house, I realized that I'd forgotten to give it to the teacher and was worried my mom would find the money once I got home, so I gave the cash to my best friend on the bus so she could go buy some ice cream and get rid of the evidence. Teacher asked mom if I was bringing any money the next day and I tearfully broke down. 1. I kicked a piece of ice at someone at recess. 2. I snuck Pokemon cards into school and we weren't allowed to have them because kids fought over them. Savage. So I joined my school in the UK about halfway through the 6 years. About that same time, we'll call him Harold, joined, and of course because we were both new I was seated with him. Harold seemed nice. We got on. As the week progressed, however, 7-year-old's mom noticed a less than pleasant smell coming from Harold. After a couple days of smell and complaining to my parents, they told me I should talk to my teacher. Talk to my teacher is exactly what I did. She seemed to understand, quietly telling me to take a seat next to Jenny at the back. Miss Teacher then proceeded to walk over to Harold and tell him that mom had to move because of the smell. Maybe he should have a bath when getting home. Never have I received such an unnerving death stare. After a couple of weeks though, I'd forgotten about the ordeal and it would seem Harold had too. We didn't sit with each other anymore but would often be part of the same group. Another couple of weeks passed. Harold and Smam were playing British Bulldog in the playground with a bunch of other similar aged peers. I was always proud of my footwork, easily avoiding the catches while darting from one end of the playground to the other. After the end of lunch bell went, everyone began going back into school, myself and Harold ending up at the back of the group. What happens next left me stunned. I still struggle to understand it now. Harold proceeded to drag his face along the concrete fence. "Frick you Smam," he screamed as he ran towards the nearest teacher. The teacher took me straight to the principal's office, who told me that I was in serious trouble and that my parents had been called. My parents arrive and are taken into a side office where they are told of what I'd done and what action the school intended to take. My parents believed me but told me they would talk to the principal the next day after things had cooled down. That same evening, just before I was sent to bed, we revived a phone call from Harold's parents. Harold had been caught mouthing off about how he'd got a student expelled from school. The next day Harold wasn't there and I was the class hero. Frick you, Harold. Harold's parents sound like pretty decent folk. A lot of parents would just cover for their little crap. This one time, I was standing around the corner in the halls. They were empty. I think I delivered the attendance to the office. And I kinda jumped out when a teacher was coming around the corner and said boo. And she dragged me to the office saying I almost gave her a heart attack. Lucky it didn't happen more recently. Student expelled for attempted murder. Threw a snowball at my teacher. 9/10 would do it again 15 years later. I was 7, and she took all my Pokemon cards away from me for being late for school twice. I was 7. Mom was late, not me. Freaking mom. When I was in 3rd grade I tried out for the play The Wizard of Oz. The previous year I didn't get a part and I always wanted to try and act. I auditioned for The Cowardly Lion and I eventually got a second audition. Meanwhile the whole time this jerk named Sergio kept telling me that I would never get the part. Later on I find out that I got the part as the lion and I was so happy that I yelled out to him, I got the part and you didn't. Well, all of a sudden my teacher flips her crap because she heard me and said that I was being so mean, telling Sergio that he didn't get the part and that I did. So she gave him the part instead and I ended up having to just be one of the guys that put straw inside the scarecrow's shirt, which had no lines and was so brief. I'm 26 years old and that still bothers me to this day when I think about it. Ugh. Freaking Sergio. He's probably one of those buttholes now that throws a fit when something isn't just handed to him and ends up on our public freakout. I was dragged into the girls' bathroom by this mountainous ogre of a 5th grade girl who had plans to defile me, and they blamed me for it. I had a 4th grade teacher that hated me. One day, the class was taking a test and I finished early. Most of the class was still working and I was bored, so I started playing with my pencils. Not making any noise, just messing with the erasers and stuff. All of a sudden I look up and she's standing over my desk, telling me off for distracting the other students who were still testing. She kept telling me that just because I was smart, only GT kid in a regular class, that didn't make me better than anyone else, and I was still subject to the same discipline. More scolding. Then she took away my pencils and went back to her desk. Considering I was like 8, getting chewed out by the teacher was a really big deal, and I was pretty much on the verge of tears. So I'm sitting at my desk, upset and waiting for everyone to finish. I end up spacing out and staring at the wall for a bit, and next thing I know she's back at my desk screaming at me to go out into the hall. So she comes out into the hall a couple minutes later and chews me out again for being disruptive, not even telling me what I did. Next thing I know, she hands me a pink referral slip to give to my parents. The kind that goes on your permanent school record, aka freakout material. I go through the rest of the day freaking out because I know my mom is gonna beat my butt. I get home and give it to my mom, crying and telling her I'm sorry and I won't ever do it again. She reads through it and quiets me down, asking me what happened. I explain everything to her, and she just sort of nods. Turns out my teacher had written me up for playing with my pencils and twirling my hair. That's it. My mom ended up going to the school and talking with the principal about all the problems I'd been having with this particular teacher. Apparently she'd been complaining about me all year, even though all my other teachers really liked me. The referral ended up getting waived and she was put on probation, and later fired, for targeting students. I was a good kid, right? Always a people pleaser. Never got in trouble. When I was in the 5th grade, I submitted a spelling homework assignment. This assignment in particular was to use the words in a sentence. At the time we were also on our poetry unit. If we incorporated alliteration in our sentences, we got extra credit. Score. The word defrosted. My sentence: Dolly defrosted Daddy's duck. You know, Dolly had duck meat in the freezer. I had never even eaten duck as a kid. I had a strict diet of grilled cheese and Lunchables, but anyway. So I turn in the assignment in the morning, go about my day. After lunch, my teacher called me out of the classroom. Oh, God, seriously? I never got in trouble, so being called out into the hallway sent my anxiety through the elementary school roof. She looked pissed and was holding my homework. Read this sentence. Now, she glares. I feel my face burning red. Confused, I read the sentence out loud. Dolly defrosted Daddy's duck. Read it again. Dolly defrosted Daddy's duck. She points to the end of the sentence. Read that word. Duck. Her face softens a bit and tells me to return to the classroom. I'm so confused at this point, it's ridiculous. Later that day, following a very lengthy conversation with my parents, I learned 2 things. 1. I have terrible handwriting. 2. The meaning of the word dong. TLDR. Dolly defrosted Daddy's dong. I remember once in 1st or 2nd grade I was really worried about germs and how gross it would be to touch the handles on the stall doors in the school bathrooms. Now, I had no problem getting into the stall and closing the door, but once I done the deed, there was no way I could touch that handle again. Well, now I was stuck in a locked stall, so I decided that for some reason it would be more sanitary to crawl out under the stall door. I managed to do this just as a teacher came in to check on the bathrooms, and got in a lot of trouble for trying to prank people by leaving an empty stall locked. I got in trouble for exactly the same reason, only in my case, I was doing it on purpose. I'd lock every door from the inside, and then turn the lights off for good measure. After a test, I erased someone's answer and gave him a score of 0. He cried and I said he was sad because he's stupid. I am evil. Ha, I did something similar. I erased one of his zeros from his answer cause I got it wrong. I thought I was clever because I just used my finger to wipe the answer away instead of actually using an eraser, so I would have plausible deniability if they asked if I erased it. Didn't work and I got in trouble. Sad day for me. I printed off Yu-Gi-Oh cards at home, laminated them and traded them to kids at school for real cards. Kids are dumb. Also, some are pieces of crap like me. I want my freaking dark magician back. I was in 2nd grade and it was one of the days where we had to bring our bicycles to school to use during PE. We were learning how to ride safely and use proper hand signals, etc. I kept asking the gym teacher if I could go to the bathroom and he wouldn't let me, so I eventually rode my bicycle right off the bicycle course and toward the bathroom. Unfortunately, I didn't make it the whole way and I peed in my pants and all over my bicycle. We were messing around with those plastic irrigation control boxes half buried in the ground and managed to turn on the water over a holiday weekend. The playground and field were built below street level by about 6 feet to act as flood control for the neighborhood, as well as the park nearby, and when we came back the thing was dang near full. We were laughing our little asses off until we all got called down to the office. For being a businessman in the 3rd grade, I started out small, trading pencils and pens for other small, tinker toys. Once I built up enough of an inventory, I opened up shop in my classroom desk. Keep in mind this was back when the desks opened up and were about 8 inches deep. I filled the entire desk with pencils, pens, erasers, tech decks, action figures, and other various toys and started selling them to my classmates for actual money. These kids would actually pay me for this crap. I had to have made about $50 in the first couple weeks before the teacher found out and shut me down. The B also gave me detention and talked to my parents about it. My mom got P as heck but my dad gave me a high five and told me he was proud. So worth it. If I ever have a kid, I plan on being a dad like yours. I used to walk to recess and in from recess with my skirt pulled up to my face in kindergarten. No idea why. I would also routinely remove my pants shorts if I was sent to school in either because I hated how restricted they made me feel. There used to be this chick that rode my bus that always got in trouble for only wearing a shirt. I slid a tambourine over my head and it got stuck. Teachers from 3 other classrooms had to come help take it off and I had to do the walk of shame through their classrooms with a tambourine around my head. My 3rd grade teacher was reading a motivational poster out loud to the classroom, and I was reading along quietly to myself, but with my lips moving. The teacher took this as me mocking her, and sent me to the principal's office with a citation and called my parents. Citation needed. Inspired by The Simpsons, I put a picture of our janitor, named Harvey, on my principal's computer and in Ms. Paint wrote "Oh Harvey." So simple and yet I'm laughing really hard right now. This one time in 2nd grade, me and some idiot kid were in the bathroom. We decided it would be a good idea to plug up the sink to see what would happen when the water level reached the little hole towards the top of the sink. a janitor walk in while we were doing this. While this clearly wasn't a good thing to do, it would be pretty awesome if the janitor had supervised that to show you what actually happened. School should be a place of learning, and you wanted to learn what happened. In kindergarten, the teacher called me out in front of the whole class and scolded me quite harshly for not wearing socks to school. I felt shame. I was devastated. She made me sit in the hall. Between our classroom door and the neighboring room's door was a little table that held all of the snack time supplies. My shame faded quickly when I realized I could hide under the table and munch on animal crackers from the bag that was left open and overhanging the edge of the table. I had my Game Boy Color in my backpack because I was playing it at my daycare before school. It fell out of my backpack when I was getting it out of the backpack closet and my teacher got mad at me. I'm still a bit upset. My English teacher in 4th grade took my book because I read too much. Had to steal it back at the end of the year because she claimed it was hers and wouldn't give it back. Back in elementary school, I was playing Twister with my friend Harry and we were both in a push-up position. So after the next move I reached under him, grabbed his shirt and pulled him down so I would win. My 3rd grade teacher thought I grabbed him by his wiener, so I spent the next week with no recess privileges. Frick you misses. Yolish. TL. DR. Frick the elementary school justice system. I mean you were a cheating little crap. In kindergarten, we were waiting in line for the teacher to take us to class, and I was trying to sing, but everyone was being too loud. If everyone would have been quiet, I could have remembered the words to the Lilo and Stitch version of Can't Help Falling in Love with You, but it was just too loud. Clearly, the solution was to scream bloody murder. Everything got real quiet real fast, and I got to go home early that day. The only time I can actually remember being yelled at was in 1st grade. The very first days of school I pretty sick, vomiting and such. So I go back to school, and I figured out that if I pretended to vomit, I could get out of class and go to the bathroom for a while. Well, I did it a little too often and I got yelled at for pretending to be sick. The real kicker was a few weeks later when I really was sick. I asked to go to the bathroom and I was told to sit down. I ended up vomiting all over the girl in front of me. Either I vomit in the toilet or I vomit on a student. Your choice, teach. In 1st grade I was put in timeout for hitting another little girl. We'd been given cheap little insect enclosures and were told to go out, find a bug, then come back inside and draw it. I caught the biggest grasshopper in the world and she tried to steal it from my hand. That be. Drinking my tomato soup through a straw. Cafeteria monitor flipped her crap. I had to eat lunch in the principal's office for 2 weeks. My friends and I played a game of never-ending dodgeball throughout school, and one time my friend was peeing in the bathroom urinal and I got him so good, he would have done the same. But then he complained and I was made to sit on the bench for the next 3 days. The following morning on the announcements they said don't play in the bathrooms. I attacked a boy in 1st grade. We were always fighting in class. My teacher got sick of it and sent us both out to the hall to wait for the principal to come get us. The funny thing was, outside of the classroom, we got along really well. We sort of bonded in our terror. We both talked about how our parents were going to beat our asses when we got home and with what. They made us sit in the isolation room together, and we kind of chatted back and forth when we could to keep each other from going mad from the silence. My 1st grade teacher, Mrs. Sullivan, hated me for whatever reason. I ended up having to see a child psychologist, at her recommendation, because I ran down the hall yelling super boobies. Well, boobies are super. Said the word crap under my breath, not knowing what it meant but remembering that a middle school age neighbor used the word. A classmate told on me and I had to explain to my teacher that I had no idea what that word meant, and then I learned what it meant when I brought the note detailing what happened home to my parents that evening. Similar story, playing with my hands because I was bored, accidentally middle fingered a substitute. I was trying to crawl through the concrete tube on our playground, but some kid was blocking the way. He said he was protecting the spiders that were inhabiting the crack in the center of the tube, and he wouldn't let me through, so I kicked him in the face. That's how I spent my last day of 1st grade in detention. Aspiderbro. Oh yeah, I also remember this one quite vividly. I was like the head teacher's favorite pupil in reception, kindergarten equivalent in UK. I had a cute smile and was the youngest in the year. Even though they aren't supposed to have favorites, I was hers. The main reason I mention this is because I think I was always really sweet and cute on their faces, but was kind of a little crap away from the teachers, and this meant that I thought I could get away with a lot. Well, like all kids my age, I had a nemesis. Jack. This little sucker was the bane of my existence and we hated each other's guts. One day, I decided I'd had enough of his crap. He'd pushed me too far. This little C was gonna get it, right after nap time. So I have my nap, bide my time like a little psycho and wait until outdoor playtime. Nap time comes and goes. We head out and start playing. I can't find him, but I know I will. Then I see him, that freaking bastard, playing football like he's some sort of innocent little angel. But I knew better. I picked up a little pebble and lobbed it with as much power as I could muster. I was aiming for his eyes, but didn't think I'd actually hit him. I was on the other side of the playground and still hit the little crap square in the right eye. I would have gotten away with it as well, but that looping shot was so beautiful and insanely unlikely that I had to celebrate. I celebrated like I scored the winning goal for the Gunners in the Champions League final. Well, those celebrations were cut short by me getting dragged away by the teacher on duty, and I received a walloping from my parents later when they found out. Oh well, that mother left me alone after that, so it was worth it. In 5th grade, a group of us guys went to the bathroom after running the mile, ending up getting detention for spending too much time in the bathroom playing around with the automatic soap dispensers, the things that entertain a young mind. I got in trouble for drawing Ninja Turtles. I was very innocently trying to give them pectoral muscles, but the teacher thought I was trying to give them boobies. Drawing the nipples didn't help. A boy tripped me in the bus, so I slapped him really hard, then lied and said he backhanded me. We had a serious crush on each other from that day onward. I learned how to spin my pencil and did it in class all day long for weeks to impress other kids. The teachers got so mad at me because I would distract all of the other kids around me as they stared at my magic pencil wizardry. You know that game where you say, first is the worst, second is the best, third is the one with the treasure chest? Well, in 2nd grade, instead of saying treasure chest, I told the third guy he had a hairy chest. He started crying and I had to stay after school so my mom could be told what I did. Some kid claimed that I threatened to stab him. I never did, but despite zero evidence and no one else having heard it, I was facing suspension if I didn't confess and apologize. My school was like that: we have no evidence of you doing it, but this kid has better grades, so if you don't admit to something you didn't do, prepare to be expelled. Muhaha. Today in school, a guy hit another student over the head with a baseball bat because he stole a firework or two off of him. What is the absolute craziest crap to have ever happened in your school? We had a minor race riot. 8-10 black kids jumped 2 white metalheads in the parking lot. Well, the metalheads at our school were a serious minority and tended to stick together, so about 15-20 metalheads jumped in to help the victims, so more black kids jumped in. The really bad part was most people don't realize how well armed an 80s metalhead was just by the virtue of their clothing. The spiked belts and armbands started flying and about a dozen people went to the hospital. Race kerfuffle. When I was in school, a long while back, somebody heated test tube holders in the Bunsen burner until they were glowing red, then clipped them on somebody else's ear. Apparently you could smell it cooking. Nasty. Apparently you could smell it cooking. I weep for those who actually know the smell of cooking human flesh. That's fricked up. 2 kids at my school took bets on who would win their pre-planned fight. They hated each other, but made out like bandits. They took a portion of all bets and split it. The first time I read through this, I thought you meant they literally made out. Was confused about the bandits part. At my high school there were a ton of fights. Lots of gang activity and lots of hick kids who didn't take that crap. One time a gangster started some crap with one of the aforementioned hicks and they get into it in the hall. Long story short, hick kid gets gangster on the ground, starts kicking the crap out of him and manages a kick to the gangster's temple with his steel-toed boots and killed him. In another fight, one kid slammed another kid's head into a wall with those decorative glass blocks and killed him. In high school, my buddy stole a dead baby pig fetus from science class and threw it on the hood of someone's car because they parked in his spot more than once. The pig, however, was not alone. He also left a sign that said "Don't pork here" to justify his insanity. At lunch in high school, two nerdy kids got into a fist fight over a Twinkie. Yes, a Twinkie. Full on fisticuffs, grappling, everything. This was considered to be more crazy than rival gang members being stabbed or an interracial fight, so the word spread like wildfire around the school. At graduation 2 years later, there were a few Twinkies thrown up on the stage when each of the two guys walked across. The student body about fell over laughing while the parents were confused. I heard a story from one of my friends about this guy everybody called Tree or some such. He liked Xanax. He really liked Xanax. Well, he takes some at school. Then he forgets if he took some. So he takes some more. Then he forgets if he took some. So he takes some more. Pretty soon he's taping Xanax pills to his leg under his pants in the middle of class, trying to hide them. He keeps to himself and manages to do okay. Until 4 hours later, he's crawling slowly on the ground between classes, measuring each step carefully to prevent himself from falling over. Teacher looks down at him, asks what he's doing. I forgot how to walk. He is promptly taken out of the school on a stretcher. Out those front doors, never to be seen again. TLDR. Guy takes Xanax and becomes salamander. I also remember one story where some girl smoked him in a bathroom, but aside from the part where she had a seizure in class, I hardly heard anything else about it. My high school had a resident prostitute. He gave head behind the dumpsters for $15. Not even joking. He works for Butters, I'm guessing. Students in my very small, private high school had parking assigned by grade. A junior girl in my class parked in the senior lot. Two senior guys took one of the doors off her car and brought it into the class she was in. They set it down and said, "Don't park in the senior lot," and left. My brother went into the computer teacher's room with some others and wiped every hard drive because the teacher called their class a bunch of morons. He also stole the principal's chair and replaced it with a kindergarten chair. They also took all the lights and computers out of the library. Also stole the teacher's overhead projector so he would celebrate his birthday. That was an interesting day full of fun announcements. Would whoever put the Vaseline on the doorknobs please come and remove it immediately. A friend of mine on the football team took a crap in the showers while we were in there after practice, then kicked it all over the walls while yelling "poo poo, poo poo." It was terrifying, but hilarious in a way. I grew up in San Diego and my middle school was a mix of suburban white kids and kids that had escaped from Mexico late in their childhood. I saw several things I can never unsee. 1. Girl fight. Fight between two girls breaks out. One girl is clearly winning. She seals her victory by taking the other girl by the hair as she's laying on the ground and repeatedly slamming her head into the asphalt. 2. Dog beating. Waiting outside a classroom and see a stray dog wander into campus. Schools in SoCal are open campuses. Group of kids waiting in front of their ESL classroom beat the dog. Multiple kids just kicking the poor dog who is clearly starving and so confused. I was terrified to do anything and so thankful when campus security came rescued the poor pup. 3. 12 years old mom. Same classroom outside of the dog beating. Different day, girl comes in with a child. A 7th grade girl brought her newborn to show off. Father was the guy who led the dog beating, an 8th grader. School security intervened in both 1 and 2, but my god, I can never get those images out of my head. What the frick? That's horrible. In the weight room, one guy was defending himself against another guy. The guy heard rumors of the other guy trying to get with his woman. The dude that was defending himself clocked the other guy so hard in the face, it knocked him out. When he got back up, there was a turd on the floor. He literally got the crap knocked out of him. When the coach came and saw a turd on the floor, he said, "God damn it, who crap on the floor?" and proceeded to pick it up with one of those stupid brown paper towels. What happened to crap boy, you ask? Well, needless to say, he didn't come to school the next day and was known as the guy that crap himself for the rest of his life. Those goddamn paper towels, they are useless. My freshman writing teacher told us that in kindergarten, his teacher held him down while 6 other kids beat the crap out of him. Freaking kindergartners. Kindergarten, FTFY. The calculus teacher at my high school was extremely strict and uppity. One person was using one of the bounty eyes he had borrowed from a friend. She saw this, took him outside of class, and screamed at him for over 7 minutes, culminating to walking over and tearing his nearly complete test and ripping it to shreds. She reported him to the administration for cheating, and then called his parents to tell them what a terrible person their kid was. How disrespectful and obnoxious he always was. He had a 4.0 plus maintained for all 4 years and never cheated nor disrupted class. In middle school, 2 guys decided to fight after school, and one of them lived in the apartments across the street. So they met up to fight, and the one who lived further away had shown up to the fight with a mini baseball bat. The guy who lived across the street said, "Hold on, I'll be right back," walked off. The first guy didn't chase him, but waited for him to come back. He did, with a golf club, and proceeded to hit the first guy in the head with it. 1 shot only, but 1 was enough. This was in the Austin, TX suburbs. I went to a white-collar middle-class non-urban community school in the 80s. I was kind of an innocent dork. One day at my locker I was grabbing books and looked next to me to see a kid sitting, leaning against his locker. He sniffed a pile of white powder off of a mirror. I was stunned and just said, "Did you just snort a line of coke?" with a wide-eyed expression on my face. He calmly said, "Nah, it was more like a pile." No time to cut lines. 8th grade. A kid whom everyone thought was gay, now 22 and he's been open about it for a few years, asked out the biggest strongest guy in school. The big guy proceeded to push the kid into a locker, punch him, push him on the ground and punch him more. Just because the gay kid asked him out. Man, I thought this was going to end with the big guy making out with the small gay guy. Talk about mood whiplash. Someone stole a military-grade smoke grenade and let it off on the last day. Police, ambulances and loads of army officials came apparently. I don't know if it's the absolute craziest, but we've already had 6 fights in our school over the election and it's only 3rd period. But then again, I am in a large high school in South Texas. Last year I was eating lunch outside my cafeteria with a few friends when 6 or 7 of the cutest puppies you have ever seen just ran towards us from the woods and played with us outside. We were petting them and playing fetch until the bell rang. When lunch was over they left, never to be heard from again. That's freaking crazy. I hope everybody was okay. Well, I guess it was when a senior threatened to have a school shooting, but he wrote about it on Facebook, so cops got to him while he was sleeping the day before. Oh Facebook. Sitting in math class when the teacher opens a drawer in his desk to get a dry erase marker. As soon as the drawer is opened, an absolutely freaking terrible stench fills the room. The teacher, male, screams like a little girl and literally falls out of his chair. Turns out someone had taken a crap in his desk. But it doesn't stop there. As if inspired by the lone desk shitter, a whole slew of kids start crapping in desks. I say a whole slew of kids because there is no way one person can crap in that many desks in that short span of time. By the next day, half the teachers in my school had turds in their desk drawers. By the end of the week, the principal was begging over the intercom for anyone with information to come forward. Over the weekend they hired a team of professional cleaners to sterilize the desks and hired a locksmith to place his locks on every desk drawer. Seems like a pretty legit plan, but a few weeks later a student stole the master key for all of the locks out of the janitor's office and the desk crapping returned full force. It died out after a month or so after they installed cameras. Craziest crap? A swarm of Asians jumping another student. It was like a Zug rush in real life. I witnessed a teacher and a principal boot frick a grade 6 student. Mind you, this is when there was corporal punishment in schools. He was on the floor and taking kicks. Kids don't know how good they have it these days. Till boot frick is a thing. The craziest thing I saw happen in school was in 10th grade. There was a kid in my class, John, who was openly gay. One day, he said something like, "Hey, what's up?" to another student, Bob. Bob says, "Shut the frick up, F," and John just rolls his eyes and walks away. Bob didn't like that, I guess. because the next thing you know, he picks up a textbook and hurls it at John's head. There's like 3 guys penning Bob down and everyone is telling John to leave, go to the counselor, principal, go anywhere else because this guy just went full crazy and hey, we don't really want him attacking you anymore. It was very shocking, not because he was blatantly homophobic, but because it just came out of nowhere. I also saw a teacher pick up a student by his neck and pin him on the wall. It was during our 5-minute passing period. Everyone was around. I didn't hear what happened to make him do that, but everyone just stopped and stared at what was going on. I went to a school that was for dropouts, at-risk kids, probationers, and other court-ordered offenders. The school itself was a series of trailers connected by boardwalks. This was surrounded by privacy fences with security cameras at each post. There was one entrance exit, and it had a metal detector. We had a social science teacher named Mr. Frazier. He was a light-skinned black man that had a cadence kind of like Obama, except with a steward and a game leg. We affectionately called him Radio. As you could imagine, a school like mine had a large population of hood rats. The gangster kids at our school hated Mr. Frazier because he was an Oreo. One day a student ended up hitting him with a desk and he never came back. This was one of those old-fashioned desks, with the metal cubby hole underneath. This one I feel bad about. Our school was 6th 12th grade, so we had to deal with middle schoolers all the time. At one point we had this wiry, little white kid join. Let's just call him Justin. He must have been 11. Anyway, rumors started flying around as to why he was there. They say that he had been dosed on amphetamines by his addict parents and locked in a closet for a number of days. He never re-socialized and his grandmother wouldn't put him back in public school. Anyway, he looked up to me for some reason and would give me his Adderall prescription, so I tolerated him. I bullied him in a big brother kind of way, but stood up for him when others bullied him. One day we are all at PE, and he is kind of just walking around on the field. Close by, a large collection of hood rat kids are playing basketball. I was feeling mischievous and bored, so I picked up a nearby basketball and lobbed it at Justin. The ball hit him and he fell over. When he got up, he looked to the basketball court and yelled, "You freaking N." Dead quiet. Shirts start flying off. People are surrounding him and it looks as if he is about to get murdered. I run over, and with the help of a teacher, smooth things over. I got called to the office to tell them what I saw. I told them that I threw the ball, and that Justin didn't know. They let him off the hook, just made him apologize in front of the class, and I got 1 day of suspension. Crazy but school. Totally thought that story was going to end with Justin destroying everyone surrounding him Terminator style. Kid held the whole school up during assembly. SWAT team was there. Bomb dogs. It was pretty intense. Turned out to be a realistic looking fake gun. Missed some school for it though, which was nice. We had a kid break a bottle over someone's head and stab them with it. We have had numerous lockdowns. Suwuru mena fights. One time I watched a guy jump onto a table and kick someone's face in. I watched 2 girls beat the crap out of another with master locks over a guy. The guy flirted with the girl that ended up nearly dying, so the GF of the guy and her friend beat her with master locks. Well, one time in school, this guy did the most bizarre crap ever. He was failing class throughout and suddenly, he started to get better grades. He apparently quit smoking and starting paying attention in class. Crazy crap, I tell you. Freaking heck, that is horrific. Halloween. A 16-year-old girl, 5 months pregnant, comes to school for the first time in weeks dressed as the Playboy bunny. She asked me to move over while I was washing my hands in the bathroom so she could take a few mirror selfies. They were uploaded to Facebook later, along with her new cover photo, an ultrasound. My favorite comment so far has to be, "I'm keeping it this time." This isn't as bad as the rest, but it's still pretty awesome. Someone hacked all of the computers, a good 500 computers, plus high-end security software, plus actually easy reset hardware installed, plus 5 individual networks, and changed the boot screen to My Little Pony's GIFs. They are also randomized. They still haven't caught him. Pro. Alright, my high school was in a rather white, middle upper class area, so of course the parents thought we needed a security guy posted in the cafeteria at lunchtime. The guy the school got was this 6'5", 300 pound man of pure unadulterated fat. This guy was rounder than our gravity well, bouncier than a trampoline, and ready to defend. Anyway, this one lunchtime, these two girls look like they are about to go at it, throwing catty comments and rearing claws. The one girl is walking away, but the other starts a running leap at her, quickly gaining speed. The guy just shifts in between them, intercepting the one girl. This is where his rotundness comes into play. She bounces off him so hard, and at such a weird trajectory that she goes through the library's floor-to-ceiling glass window pane. Library right next to cafeteria. Girl made it out with a few cuts, mostly from the glass on the ground, and guard got a round of applause from all of us eating. I'm glad he didn't get fired for it, since it wasn't his fault, and the girl's parents apparently paid for new glass. So happy ending. My senior year of high school, some kid jumped another and bashed his head in with a piece of cinder block, or sidewalk, or a brick. The story changed as it was told. Pretty sure the kid survived, though. Don't know the full extent of the attack. I remember getting into my first hour class and there were kids who saw it freaking out about it. Fights were pretty common at my school. The year before I was heading to my art class and the hallways was ridiculously overcrowded. After a moment I saw a dean leading a student out and the student had blood dripping all down his face. Didn't think much of it until I had to do my assignment for art, drawing a part of the hallway, and the janitor was mopping up blood right where I was supposed to sit down. 1. Elementary school. This kid Bobby was not well liked. He had behavioral and learning issues. Well, one day one of these twin brothers, who were total douchebags, was taunting Bobby and stupidly called Bobby the N-word. Yeah, too far. Bobby snapped and started just crazy wailing on the guy. Not like an organized fight, but full out insane person dangerous flailing. He ended up punching the teacher that tried to break it up. They actually had to call the dare officer out to the playground. And I missed the whole thing because I didn't do my homework and was kept in at recess to finish it. Damn it. 2. High school. This tiny freshman in the Spanish 1 class across from my Spanish 3 class was apparently constantly getting abuse from this larger butthole kid. Taunts, thrown pencils, tripping him as he passed, etc. One day the small fry had had enough, and as soon as they both got into the hallway when class ended, he jumped his tormentor and proceeded to beat the ever-loving crap out of the larger kid. The best part? All the teachers in the hall either A, pretended not to see or B, pretended to be trying to push their way through the mass of students. The teachers only really moved to break it up when the 4 minutes in between classes was about to end. They also didn't drag anyone to the office for fighting. 3. High school. Major chick fight in the cafeteria because apparently chick A talked trash about chick B's son. They had to be held apart by like 3 football players each. Chick B managed to slip out of the hold and ran over lunch tables, jumping over student seating, shrieking and dove at the other restrained girl, arms stretched out, fingers bent into claws. An attack right out of the comic books. Happened less than 2 weeks ago at my school. There's a really popular kid, let's call him Jack, who everybody knows and he's a very likable dude. Funny, not a jerk, everyone's friend, basically. Not only that, but he's also doing really good in school and basically could go to whatever school he wanted. He was also a bit of a prankster, so he handcuffed a kid, let's call him Joe, to a bathroom stall. He was stuck there for half an hour. He freaking sued him for that. The worst part is that Jack's dad testified against his own son, calling him disrespectful. It was a guilty verdict. Now, Jack goes to a different school and everyone hates Joe. Back in 1999 I went to a school called Bryan Middle School which was right next to the high school aptly named Bryan High School. One day 2 kids got into a fight and one of them was eventually knocked down. Turns out that the cafeteria floor is more dense than his skull was as he died from massive head trauma. Crap got real that day. I think when I was 14 or so in school, a bee had landed on a large window in the classroom. Someone then proceeded to take his big, heavy binder and smash the bee with it. Not just the bee, but the window with it. Half the school heard it. Not my stories, but my psychology teachers, who now works volunteers with the K9 unit and used to work in a much worse area. 1. One girl attacked another girl with a metal fork from the cafeteria, while the second girl responded by pulling a razor blade out of her cheek and slashing the heck out of the first girl's face. Apparently they were fighting because one of them was dating the other's boyfriend, who was cheating on both of them with a third girl. Two male teachers had to forcibly pull the two of them apart. The gym teacher suffered massive cuts and slashes along his torso and forearms in the process. The first girl, the instigator, later sued the school because the staff didn't respond quickly enough to stop the fight and did a stint on daytime TV to pay for her facial reconstruction surgery. 2. A student in one of her classes was having a bad trip on LSD or PCP while in school, walked into her class, and attacked her. After she fought him off, locked him out of her classroom, and he cooled down in the hallway. He later explained that while on the drugs, he thought she was a demon. Two separate incidents, but I remember once somebody emptied an entire can of mace into the school air ducts, so it spread throughout the lower floors. It wasn't burning awful, but I remember everyone coughing from it and getting to leave early. And one time someone just decided to take out a lighter between classes and set a bulletin board in the hall on fire. I once got institutionalized and suspended from school for having a website that spoke out against Christianity while living in the Bible Belt. Of course, this was back in 1998, before such an idea became so radical and before school shootings became so popular. Every morning in high school my bus was one of the first ones to arrive, giving me 20 minutes before I had to go to homeroom to eat a small breakfast. What did I eat for breakfast almost every morning? A bagel with butter. Now, you should know that at my school they put the butter and cream cheese, jelly, etc. out in the morning over ice, and it sits there all day. Despite my slight aversion to all things unclean, I think I'm pretty safe by eating my bagel in the mornings when they first set it out and not going near that crap for the rest of the day. One day the AP biology students were dissecting rats. It's pretty well known in my city that 90% of the kids in my high school were douchebagger shats with no consideration for anybody else. It would surprise me if they even realized that anybody else existed in their perfect worlds of BMWs and Oakley sunglasses. So, of course, there is drama on dissecting day. What's happened? Someone has managed to sneak a dead and preserved rat's tail out of the biolab. Cool, I could really care less. What do they do with it? They put it in the mother freaking butter. I just couldn't bring myself to eat the butter after that. Freaking idiots, ruining my breakfast. We had multiple inappropriate teacher-student relationships, including a statutory sodomy charge against the softball coach. Ended up being quite true. And loads of fights averaging around 3 times a week. The one that stands out to me involved a guy cheating on his girlfriend who then decided to stab in the neck with a ballpoint pen. She hit an artery and nearly killed him in the cafeteria. Bonus story, a guy was running from the school police officer and accidentally dropped his crack pipe in front of the whole school during lunch. Some guy knew there was something a bit off about him, called another student a dong during class, even though the other student was sort of trolling him during the class discussion. The teacher said, "Al, I will not accept that sort of language in my classroom. Go talk to the director." Our school had a director, not a principal. Anyway, he stands up and starts flipping out about how he needs to stay in class and learn, and the teacher keeps telling him he needs to leave. The kid flips out and screams, "I'm not an animal. Stop treating me like an animal." Another kid in the class mutters, "Well, you're acting like one." The kid basically loses it, starts crying, and eventually gets led away by 2 teachers. We never saw him again. No joke, this is true. I went to a weird school. Advanced school, maybe, but weird. Al wasn't his real name, of course. What do you dislike about school? Bathroom rules. Just let me pee. Teachers are teaching us to act like responsible adults, yet we still have to ask them to use the bathroom. The amount of unnecessary work and classes I am forced to take. The amount of stress I got to undertake just to end up having an entry-level job, or better yet having to pay so much in tuition while starving on campus just so they can tell me, "We changed your requirements for graduation so you gotta take more bulls." In summary, I just hate having to show up to that bulls before I can make any money in my chosen field. The fact that I spent 2 years in college learning everything I should have learned in high school proved to me that high school was a complete waste of time. I could have used those extra years doing more in my field. Back when I went to school, I really disliked the bathroom. The mirrors had been shattered and removed years before I started going to school. The chain that activated the flush had broken so many times you pretty much had to step on the throne to flush. Also, there was no lid and no seat on the throne, no toilet paper. We all took our tissues to the bathroom, no hand sanitizer. Some people took soap with them. The doors had the locks broken as well. So we went in pairs. One holds the door and one does their business. Lots of graffiti, but fortunately the bathroom didn't smell so bad. The maintenance people did their best. All in all, I learned to go before leaving home and go again after arriving home, 6 hours later. Accidental or not, teaching students that failure is wrong. Ingraining the fear of failure over actually learning. Accidental or not, teaching students that their worth is measured by their productivity. School takes over students' lives when they are supposed to have fun or explore their own interest. Admittedly, it's very, very difficult to find that fine line where you're teaching students how to be productive members of society and develop critical thinking skills while also not instilling your worth as a person is measured by your contribution to class and how good you are at these specific things. Even in my field, music, I struggle with this often while I teach. The fact I graduated years ago and still wake up thinking I have an end of term paper due that I haven't started yet and just ignored all semester. Yet, I'm in my mid-30s and I will occasionally have a dream like that. Usually it's a test I have that I didn't study for. All the freaking lies. In elementary school, it was if you don't handwrite your work, you'll get a 0 in high school, or you can't do math in pen, you'll get 0 in high school, or you have a permanent record that follows you to university or college, or I'm not repeating what the homework was because in high school they won't repeat things that you miss for you. Worst lie of all was teachers don't have favorites. Yes, you freaking do. The who's your favorite thing was always met by a joking don't worry, I hate you all equally. As long as I got A's and B's, any extenuating circumstances in my life weren't a concern to them no matter how much it impacted my mental health. Same thing happened to me and my best friend. Didn't give a crap about our mental health because our grades were good. Both of us went to the guidance counselor for help only to be brushed off because we did well in school. Just because we're fine in one area doesn't mean we aren't struggling in another area. Former college professor here. I might return to teaching at some point in my career, but I'm working elsewhere for now. My philosophy as a teacher was that I was ready to give A's to 100% of my students if they performed well. I did not grade on a curve. I believe that students should not be competing against their peers. They should be trying to master the material. With that said, here's what I disliked about school as an instructor. 1. Students who would not come to me for help with problem sets, even though I had flexible office hours, and would personally reach out to students by email if I knew they were having trouble. 2. Students who plagiarize in their final projects, and there were a lot of them. Seriously, folks, the school told you they used Turnitin. We will know. How bullies got 0 consequences for their actions, and only the bullied were punished. It took me almost a decade to learn to love myself, even with the help of my family. I hated being chaperoned all the time, hated being grouped in with kids who refused to mature, peaking mainly of high school, adults watching our every move and making sure we're in a safe environment, that is, school dances and such. I mean, I get it, I just felt like for me it wasn't really needed, and I hated the sheltered feeling as I was never sheltered early on and maybe saw too much and grew up a little faster. So around high school I was living in a different household where they'd try to shield me from the world and I found it ridiculous. High school was the same way. This all sounds like a me problem, I know, but these are just my thoughts about it, lol. I know what you mean. I'm still in high school though. I guess things feel less legit and kind of more awkward when we're basically being babysat by teachers all the time. As a teacher, 1. Wasted time. 2. Starts too early. 3. Kids not being held accountable for their actions when it is beyond my control. 4. Homework. Not a fan as a math teacher, but it is somewhat a necessary evil. Learning isn't about discovering and growing like it should be. It's about memorizing information and then passing a test. It takes the fun out of learning and makes it obligatory. The fact that I'm constantly surrounded by horrible people. As a former high school teacher, I think this is the worst part too. I'd have a class of 90% great to average students, but the 10% who were total psychos would frequently ruin everything for everyone. Pretty much everything. My high school does have some good teachers, but I loathe the stress. I loathe the waking up early. I also loathe the assignments they're given when all the due dates are on the same week. I also dislike the fact that my parents undermine me when I have issues with the school system. I love my parents, but school just sucks. The people there. I got beaten almost every day I was there. Had my wrist broken by a bully slamming my arm in a door and kicking it. Still have scars. Had black eyes, bruises and bloody noses. Thing is, I loved to learn. I loved the lessons and the new stuff I got to learn every day, but it was overshadowed by the fact it was a prison I was kept in and got beaten down constantly. School should take the bully thing more seriously, I guess. Everything. Waking up butt crack early, especially during the colder months, and riding on a bus with little to no heating. Standing outside of school for an hour, which again sucks more when it's cold and your choice of coat is limited by uniform policy. Going through 7-8 hours of classes that not even teachers seemed enthused to go through. And if you're really unlucky, one with a major attitude problem who will gladly punish entire classes for the actions of one or two smartasses. Students who look for anything to insult you over. Shoes, interests, not having sex at age 14. With no way to actually avoid these people, and faculty who won't do anything to tell kids, hey, stop being an butthole. Can't defend yourself if a fight starts, because then zero tolerance policies kick in. Long bus rides home, hours of homework, parents berating you over bad grades, and restless sleep as you get ready for the next day. Frick all that. This is the most accurate reply I've read here. That so often, I don't really learn anything because there's so much work to do. I memorize, and do what I need to get the mark I want on my tests and assignments, and immediately have to move on to the next thing. My marks are great, better than they've ever been, in fact, but they don't reflect actual understanding of the material. And what kills me is that I actually want to understand the material. I'm picking classes with the intention that they'll benefit my learning and make my degree worthwhile. But the amount of work I have to do with all my other classes and commitments prevents me from getting a chance to sit down and actually absorb the material. Teachers not wanting to answer a question about why something is the way it is because that's just how it works. Sometimes a little background information actually helps to understand what is being thought, and info also helps to spark interest. The fact that the way students are taught hasn't really changed in over 100 years. Sit still at a desk for the majority of the day, listening to receive info with prescribed subjects regardless of future usefulness. Despite the fact that we know many people have such varied learning styles and needs. Also very little consideration for what skills and knowledge may be needed in the next 50 years in the workforce. The whole core of the system needs to change. The whole concept is just flawed, and I don't see who benefits from it. Everyone would benefit if we would improve it, but not a single person gives a crap about it apparently. Bad teachers. Specifically those that have weird grading policies, and those that are super harsh with grading despite not even teaching how to do it properly. Looking at you English teachers. One time my class had a geography teacher who, when she realized that she missed out a quarter of the curriculum, decided to teach it to us by giving us sheets with questions for a single half-hour lesson. No wonder 90% of the class failed. The year before 80% of the entire year failed because they set up the exam as a Kahoot during COVID. I hated the fact that without fail, there is always that one teacher who just wants to push everyone's buttons and would feel something other than the emptiness they feel inside when they see their students finally snap. I'm glad I graduated. Tons, and would feel something other than the emptiness they feel in. Frick that teacher. Colleges making you take gen ed classes that have nothing to do with your major to milk you for your money for 4 years. A degree for standard business would only take 2 years without all the bulls. The courses you take in business degrees are kind of bulls anyways. Take it from someone who knows plenty of people who did these degrees and hardly used half of the major requirements anyways. Is it strange that I want to enroll a college again even if it costs me approximately $30,000 at least? I love being a student. You can take community college for much cheaper if you just want to be a student. Heck, even many universities have extension and professional programs you can take and pay per unit. I've since graduated, but I can't stand how hot it gets in most schools. Oftentimes most people couldn't even wear warm clothing to school during winter. I live in Michigan, for context, because it was that bad. I get that the way the buildings are designed to keep all the heat in, but it always felt like overkill to the worst degree. The horrible sex education system. At least in America, it's basically just, don't have sex. And if you do, don't, sex will give you AIDS and then you'll die! ! One freaking bugs me. Jokes on them. You can't get AIDS from sexual intercourse. Grades. They just turn school into a stress-inducing nightmare. I love learning, but my school is hyper-focused on these stupid arbitrary numbers that stress me out so much. It forces you to have to care more about things that you are less passionate about, leaving you with little time to engage with your passions. I literally could have taken an astronomy class, a subject that I absolutely adore, but it automatically made me take AP chemistry so that I can finish the subject. Focus of success on standardized tests instead of real-world success. I feel like I barely stumbled through getting a mortgage to buy my first home, but, oh boy, my multiple choice skills are on point. The fact that it killed my love of reading. I used to love reading chapter books when I was a kid, and in kindergarten would spend my time doing that during the free time. Then at around 7 or 8, when it became mandatory to read certain books and then do boring reports on them, it absolutely killed my love for it. I didn't start reading for pleasure again until I was about 21 or 22. 1. Tons of useless studying and homeworks. 2. Tons of useless and boring lessons about subjects that are neither useless nor boring. 3. Incompetent teachers or teachers who are drunk on power. 4. The general waste of time. 5. The great amounts of stress over things that are unimportant in the long run, and sometimes even the day afterwards. 3/4 of school is government funded babysitting. You aren't actually learning that much that fast. They fill up the time with pointless tasks because a lot of them don't really care about making it engaging. I think it's something like 2 hours a day is anything that's actually improving your education. Wasting my time turning classes into something nearing political party gatherings and encouraging high grades with little to no payoff. The endless amount of homework. I get the idea behind it, so it tests your knowledge of what you're learning, but many times it's taken too far. Something I deeply dislike about it is the frequent stress. It seems like teachers enjoy watching the students getting anxious about assignments test, when in reality, it doesn't affect the grade. It's just unnecessary and unhealthy. The second thing that comes to mind is when the teachers don't plan the test together. It always results in having 2 tests in a day. It's so stupid. When I was in school, it was always group work. Teachers would justify it by saying you're going to have to learn to work with people for when you get to the real world. Curriculum outdated. Does actually teach the child anything, and it prepares you for a completely outdated and irrelevant standard test that it's less effort to cheat on, resulting in no motivation to retain any of the knowledge throughout the lessons. Even in college working on bachelor's, you're getting irrelevant information that you'll never use in a real world setting so you can pass a random but definition test. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.